Look, before we kick off, quick one for anyone who has said, right, this is the year, more times than they want to admit. New Year's resolutions, eh? Well, Power B is a full meal replacement shake exclusively from Nature B. It's not a snack. It's not a gimmick. It is an actual meal. It's the only shake in Australia with Nature B's Power Pollen built in, plus grass-fed whey protein and probiotics for gut health. Now, 2 shakes a day alongside a balanced diet and exercise, and it's as simple as that. Grab the intro pack for $39.95 at natureb.com. And if you grab a couple of the other goodies and spend over $79.90 before January 30, you go into the draw to win that fantastic $20,000 worth of luxury travel. Plus, if it's not for you, well, there's a 100% money-back guarantee. Follow the links in the description or head to natureb.com.
In a world where voices are silenced, one man refuses to lie down.
It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
He's been punted not once,
40 years they've been trying.
not twice,
You couldn't fire somebody if they were horrible, doing a terrible job.
but 3 times.
You're fired.
He doesn't tell you what to think, but gives you something to think about. Welcome to the Bonafide podcast with Luke Bonar. And he's not
All right, here we go.
done
Hold your ears, folks.
yet.
It's showtime.
So, hello and welcome to an exciting episode 76. We are actually recording this on January 26th, Australia Day. We'll have more on that in just a second. Today, we're going to discover what really happened. Kelsey's friend's hen's night. And she split the G. Mm-hmm. Oh, that sounds painful.
No.
How is your G?
Please don't ever say that again.
Well, you split it.
It is a task that we had to do. We were playing a hens party game. We had bingo cards, and one of them was splitting the G. And for the uninitiated, this is where you, in the first sip of your Guinness, you have to finish your sip exactly halfway between the G on the Guinness cup. And that was my first ever attempt at such a thing. And I think I did all right. I overshot the mark a little bit, but
So it's half sculling a Guinness.
kinda, yeah.
Why?
Well, it's just a fun little game. It's really big in the UK. I reckon we should get you to split the G.
No, I shan't be doing that.
Do you like Guinness?
I do. It's to be savoured. It is to be sipped and enjoyed.
I can't even remember what it tastes like, to be honest.
Stout. It's a stout.
Right.
And it doesn't travel well. If you ask anyone who's had Guinness or stout out of a tap in the UK, particularly in Ireland, it's completely different. Same brand, brewed to the same recipe, it does not taste the same.
Well, I feel like Guinness drinkers are very, you have to have it in a Guinness glass.
Yes.
There are strict rules around how you can and can't drink a Guinness. It has to be poured properly as well.
It takes a long time. It draws.
Yeah.
And it goes white to black very, very slowly. You've got to take a lot of time to let it draw properly.
I swear to God, when I ordered it, the bartender, I could tell that she was like, oh, fudge, another Guinness.
Thank you.
Because it is hard to pour. Like, it took her ages to pour it to get it to the right spot.
It does. There's a skill in pouring a Guinness, and I guess a lot of young bartenders who are probably pouring drinks and cocktails for a younger generation don't get to pour many Guinnesses. It's an old-fashioned thing.
Would you take a beer back if it had too much head on it?
Absolutely.
Right. How much is too much head?
Oh,
No, you don't. Just answer the question directly.
that much?
So like a centimetre.
1.5 centimetres is good.
Okay.
I got a mate who got a beer, and he looked at it and he said to the barmaid, he said, "Is there any chance you can put some lemonade in that?" And she said, "Sure." He said, "Good, put some more beer in it then."
Nice.
Just a reminder that this is the last week you can enter the Nature Bee competition. Meal replacement shakes, they are sensational. Win yourself a holiday anywhere in the world to the value of $20. Order your Nature Bee now.
You mean to the value of $20,000?
What did I say?
You said $20. You're not getting far on $20.
You're not getting very far at all.
Can't even get to the city for $20.
$20,000 anywhere in the world, naturebee.com. You has told me that we've had a lot of requests from people wanting to know more about the eccentric and very outspoken politician Bob Katter,
Yes.
who has been in politics since 1974.
Wow.
Entered the Queensland Parliament in 1974 as a National Party candidate, worked with Joe Bioki-Peterson. Interestingly, his father was a Labor politician. Bob Katter went the other way. And his son now works with him in the Katter Party. But he is an extraordinary bloke. Do you remember the time he made national headlines when he went to order in the parliamentary dining room in Canberra a lunch? It was a fish lunch.
Right, okay.
And they said, we don't accept cash. We only accept your credit card. And he hit the roof. And it made national headlines. Do you remember that story?
Kinda. He said a lot of sensational things that have made headlines, so it's hard to keep up with them all.
Well, look it up. He's not happy with gun reform. He has a lot to say about the split in the coalition. He has a lot to say about Pauline Hanson. He's often compared to Pauline Hanson.
Does he like Pauline Hanson? Do they get along?
Now and then.
Right, okay.
Now and then.
Now and then.
Love, hate.
Yeah, love, hate, yeah. I like that, though. I like that you can
I don't know.
agree.
Hate's too strong. Love, not so much love.
Yeah, yeah. But I like that, though. I think politicians should be able to respect one another while still disagreeing with each other.
Well, the one thing he does have in common with Pauline Hanson is he's not scared to say what's on his mind.
And neither is she.
And he sticks by what he says.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, we'll take a deep dive into Bob Katter and we'll find out what makes this extraordinary bloke tick.
Well, you'll also remember not that long ago, he went viral on social media for that line. We'll play it here.
Bob, you've got Lebanese heritage yourself.
Oh, mate, don't say that, because that irritates me, and I punch blokes in the mouth for saying that. Don't you dare say that.
Remember that? He's so good. There's so many good one-liners from him.
He's a funny bloke. Bob Katter coming up in depth. And our old mate, the king of the highway, Rod Hannafy and Truckee Tuesday. That's coming up.
News updates.
So it's Australia Day. And it's a day that is, for some, a day of celebration, a day of being really proud of living in this great country. And for others, it's not so happy. It's a divisive date. People will argue that Australia Day is not a day to be celebrated because it's called Invasion Day because of what happened 250 years ago, European settlement. And, of course, and it's well documented, Indigenous Australians were treated absolutely terribly in the past. And you cannot deny that and you can't run away from it. But do we move on? Do we say it was a shameful past? We acknowledge it and it should never have happened. But now we're moving forward, and to bring this country together and to move forward, should we push through? No one will, you can never get everyone agreeing on the date. You never have. But what's another date? What is a date where we can all races, all creeds, all colours, all backgrounds, all religions, what is a date that we can say this is our day? If not January 26th, give me another date.
Well, I think that's a question for historians, and I'm also sure if we looked into it a little further, I'm sure there's probably some great suggestions that have already been put forward. I was actually talking about this with my friend the other day, and we were talking about Australians should have a day to celebrate, right? We should have a day to be proud of this country, day off, celebrate with your friends, all of those things. Because there is such a, I guess, negative feeling associated with January 26th among the first people of Australia, I can understand the argument for changing the date. Absolutely. But I'm with you, Luke. I don't know what date that would be.
You see, for me, Anzac Day is my day of...
You can't really celebrate on Anzac
No, you can't.
Day.
It's a day of reflection. It's a day I feel extremely grateful for those who laid down their lives, took enormous sacrifices to hand us the country that you and I and everyone enjoys. Anzac Day to me is a very, very important day, but it's a day of remembrance. To me, it's not a day of celebration. Mind you, after the dawn services and the marches...
Well, that's Australian culture, though, isn't it?
There's a lot of drinking and two up and all of that sort of stuff.
Well, I feel like that's how Australians remember a lot of the time. But I'm going to say something, I guess, divisive. So the whole, it was 250 years ago. Should we move on? I guess the same argument can be said for, Anzac Day. Young people saying, It was so
It
long
glorifies
ago.
war.
Well, it was so long ago. Like, why are we focusing still on war today? I don't agree with this. I personally don't agree with this, but it's the same argument, essentially. It happened so long ago, we weren't involved. Why do we have to keep bringing it up all the time?
Because I think you need to remember why you're allowed this freedom of speech and why you're allowed to protest, why you're allowed to vote, why we have a democracy, and the sacrifices that, for example, my grandfather, so that would be your great-great-grandfather, who fought at Villers-Bretonneux,
Yeah.
survived, came back a broken man, and just what they went through. And I'm just talking about World War One.
We can also say that, like, the Indigenous lives that were lost to make this country,
100%.
to pave way for this country.
So have we forgotten the respect for Indigenous Australians? Just remember, there aren't many of us left that don't have European blood in us. And if it wasn't for European settlement, we wouldn't be here.
yeah, but that's not a
I still call
justification
myself,
for
no.
colonisation.
It happened. I mean, you look at
Yeah,
what
it
happened
happens
in
everywhere.
Europe with the Romans.
You look what bloody Trump's doing now.
Do you want to go down that?
We
but
will.
I'm just looking at. I don't think we have forgotten how important Indigenous culture. It's nearly 65 years of continuous Indigenous culture, and it needs to be respected. And I think it is. Let me just give you some examples. March 21, Harmony Day. May 26, National Sorry Day. June 3rd, Mabo Day. July, we have NAIDOC Week. August the 9th, International Day of World Indigenous Peoples. 13th of February, National Apology Day. 27th of May, National Reconciliation Week.
But none of these are public holidays, though. They're just like
but the days that we put aside
they're
to
not,
respect
but it's different
Indigenous
because it's
culture.
not a public holiday.
Should they be? It's a lot.
Well,
of
at least one of
it's a
them.
lot of public holidays.
I mean, I think we can all get around more public holidays.
Tell the employers that they're going to pay the extra wages and you have to pay more for your coffee and your smashed avo at the cafe.
Whatever, Trevor. I would still like more public holidays.
Whatever what?
Whatever, Trevor.
Anyway, happy to get your thoughts on all of this. It is a divisive day. A lot of people see that as sad. A lot of people who want to celebrate 26th of January are made to feel guilty.
Yeah.
So what is the day? If you give me a day that everyone can enjoy without guilt, I'm up for suggestions.
Yeah. I think no matter what, though, two things can be true at the same time, right? You can love the country, you can want to celebrate today, and you can also pay your respects to the Indigenous culture that we've lost as well.
Should we move on to other things?
Yeah, what else is making headlines?
Well, you know how last time you and I talked about that amazing speech by the Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney, and it's sent ripples right around the world. And it does make you think, what is our relationship with the United States? Do we preserve it because we need their protective umbrella when it comes to all things military? But our biggest trading partner is China. And Mark Carney has said, well, they're doing deals with China now because of the tariffs that Trump puts on countries that he disagrees with.
Yeah.
For example, those countries that said, no, we'll support Greenland and I'll put a tariff on you. And then he backtracked. It frightens me because he is the most powerful, arguably the most powerful man in the world, the commander-in-chief of the United States. And yet he frightens the hell out of me, Kelsey.
Yes, well, I'm
And
sure...
look at Minnesota. Look at Minneapolis.
I know. I'm sure everyone has seen the news in the last couple of days. Another American citizen was shot by ICE agents, and his name...
Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
Yes, and his name was Alex Preddy. He was an ICU nurse. And I have seen the footage now, or from all the angles that have come out. It is frightening to see the American government currently trying to make people not believe what they're seeing with their own eyes. They said that Alex Preddy was approaching people with a weapon. Now, he did have a weapon on him, but you do have open carry laws, right? And he was legally armed, but it was in his back pocket, right? It was in his back pocket. It's after he's pushed down to the ground and there's about 5 different ICE agents on top of him, kind of like grappling with him. Quite literally, I think it's like someone timed it. It was like 1 second before he was shot. You can see an ICE agent pull his gun from his back pocket and like chuck it to the side. And we've seen this, there's multiple angles of this, right? And so he was not armed, as in he was not holding his gun.
He wasn't a threat.
No, he wasn't a threat at all. The only thing he had in his hands was a phone, and he got involved in this altercation because he was trying to help another woman off the ground. And it is just frightening footage. It is frightening. And again, I've said this to you before, Luke, that when I was younger, I remember thinking to myself, oh, how nice is it that I was born in a time when the world has kind of figured out its shit. And whoa, was I wrong. I was so wrong. I was so wrong about that.
It is a frightening world. Okay, this is just something a little bit different.
Okay.
This proves how out of touch I am.
Well, we didn't need evidence for that, but
The Triple J Top 100.
Yeah.
Australia Top
Hottest 100.
Hottest
yeah.
100 was released. And I don't know any of them.
Of course not.
I don't know any of them. Now,
It's not really a top 100 for you, Luke.
no, it's not. I kept looking through the list. I couldn't find Deep Water by Richard Clapton anywhere.
God.
I couldn't find K Sand Chisel anywhere. I couldn't find Sounds
Well,
of Them
Luke,
by
it has to be
Gang
songs that were released this year.
See, I don't know anything. Olivia Dean, Man I
Yes.
Need.
Great track, guys. Go listen to it if you can.
Dancing to Kelly Holiday.
Yes, he's the other half of, he's dating Abby Chatfield, and the song is actually about her.
Tame Impala, Dracula.
Oh, yeah, I love Tame Impala.
How's it go?
Actually, I don't know.
You don't know?
No.
Play Lunch, Keith.
I actually have no idea who that is.
Melbourne Bogan Funk Band.
I don't know who that is.
Ray, Where Is My Husband?
Yep, love that. What would your top 100 be? Well, okay, give me your top 3.
Australian songs
Yeah,
of all time.
yeah.
Of all time. Well, everyone loves Down Under by Men at Work, the
Yeah.
theme for Winning Australia 2. I mentioned K San, Last Plane Out of Sydney's Almost Gone. Gangajang, Sounds of Then.
What's that?
Watch lightning crack over cane fields and sit and think. This is Australia.
Oh, yeah.
Check it out.
In comparison to how many songs are made about America, Australia doesn't really have that many like Australian songs.
Peter Allen, I Still Call Australia Home. That gives me goosebumps.
Yeah, that's a good one. It just reminds me of Qantas, though, every time I hear it.
That was a very, very clever marketing plan, wasn't it? With
Absolutely.
the Australian Children's Choir.
I wonder how much
all over
money they paid to
was one of the
copyright it.
It was one of the, I don't know, but the cost of making it, because of the original ad with them all in their beautiful little white, all
across
over the world.
Uluru.
All over, no, Paris, London,
Yeah.
New York.
You know, that made me want to join the Australian Girls Choir when I saw that ad, but never happened.
Deep Water, Richard Clapton, sitting out in the Palm Beach Road. I'm so drunk and the car won't go. My crazy eyes
Why don't we
keep
get the-
looking out to sea.
Why don't we get the audience to send us, because I started making a playlist, right, of all the songs that you've mentioned on the podcast. And so if you have a song suggestion to put on the Bonafide Spotify playlist, send them in, because I'll put them on the playlist and I'll make the playlist public. So we've got a Bonafide travel song playlist.
And can we mix it up? Are you talking about a road trip playlist?
Yeah. I've started making it on Spotify. So now, and over the past year, I've kind of kept track of most of the songs that you've mentioned. And so now, give me your suggestions, people, and I'll add it to the playlist, make it public, and then you guys can listen to it as you're on the road.
Australia's beloved Olympic sprinter Kathy Freeman was recognised today in the Australia Day honours list, alongside a driving force of one of the game's youngest sports, skateboarding, a world-leading quantum scientist, a children's book illustrator, rock royalty, and the enforcer of Australia's world-first social media ban.
Yes, interestingly, Julie Inman Grant, who is the e-safety commissioner, she was, I can't remember what it's called, she was given some award today.
Public Service Medal in recognition of her work shepherding Australia's social media ban and her exceptional leadership, courage and resolve in protecting Australians online.
Yes. Part of me kind of feels like the government is doing everything that it can to try and signal that, like, no, this is good, this is good, this is good. We're giving people awards because this is a really good policy, you know?
Midnight Oil's Rob Hurst, who sadly passed away just last Tuesday. He was posthumously given a member of the Order of Australia for his service to the performing arts. I first saw Midnight Oil in 1978, 79, and I was so wrapped up in blues and jazz and Richard Clapton's and a friend of mine said, you need to take the blinkers off and you need to go and see this radical new, they called them New Wave.
Radical
New Wave band with so much energy called Midnight Oil. I said, a friend of mine has told me about them. And I used to see the posters, Midnight Oil, at the Royal Antler. And, they got this massive singer with a bald head and he's quite frightening and so much energy. And I said, no, thanks. And she said, well, you've just got to take your blinkers off. So I go into Manly and there used to be a venue opposite the lawn tennis there on Old Pittwater Road. And it was an old movie theatre. And they turned it into a live music venue and they called it the Flicks. And Midnight Oil were there. So I go in, right? And I've never seen anything like it. I remember it like yesterday. So it was a 2-tiered theatre. All the seats were taken out down the bottom, but there was still seating on the top. Mm-hmm. So I go up the top because I couldn't cope with the sweat and the...
Yeah, you are a bit of a princess, yeah.
The carry on downstairs. What I saw amazed me. I've never seen anything like it in my life. And I remember here, Peter Garrett said, and we're just about to release a new song. We're actually recording this gig tonight. It's a song that's going to be released on 2SM this week, and it's called Run by Night. I loved it. Yo, run by night. Anyway, are we allowed to play?
No, we can't.
So I'm watching Midnight Oil for the first time and I heard them debut this song called Run by Night. And I've never seen anything like it.
Is Midnight Oil the one where like some of their like merch has got that hand on it?
Yes, Peter Garrett's hands.
Yeah, I've seen Midnight Oil when I was in Orange.
Yeah, Midnight Oil. So Rob Hurst remembered today on Australia Day. What's the best band you've ever seen live? You've actually had to have been there and seen them live.
Taylor Swift.
Well, Midnight Oil was amazing. There was they called it new wave music. And the Angels were coming out around that time. Doc Neeson.
Don't know who
They were
is.
very powerful on stage. I've seen Cold Chisel live plenty, but I saw Cold Chisel in pubs, and their energy in a smaller pub, the Antler, the Manly Vale, the Mona Vale.
Yeah.
All those, we were very lucky on the Northern Beaches. We had all these great bands every Friday and Saturday night. So I was very lucky growing up in the late 70s and had access to these great bands live.
Yeah, see, you guys had it so much better back in the day.
Oh, we just knew where to live, Kelsey. We got an email from David. Hi, Luke and Kelsey, long-time listener from the Triple M days. Appreciate the podcast, keeps me entertained while driving long hours carting fuel. Good on you. Tanker wanker.
I've never heard of that, but it makes sense.
That's what they're called. Didn't you know that?
No, never heard of it. I know that they do there's something about the shit.
No, that's livestock. They're called turd herders.
Turd herders, that's it.
And then if you carry building materials or dirt, mud carter.
I thought that was the tip people that run back and forth from the tip.
No, I think anyone that drives a truck that has soil in it.
Right. Oh, okay. Yeah. I see.
Yeah. So tanker wankers.
Yeah.
So we got a tanker wanker. And David, good on you, David. Love what you do. My wife and I were sitting at our patio table with our Cocker Spaniel, Hamish, on my lap. Oh, God. Another
cutie
one.
pie.
Send us a photo.
Yeah, send us your flute.
Send us a photo of your Miri. I started to feel goosebumps and felt a presence on my left side. My wife asked if there was someone there, and I said, I can see someone from the waist down out of the corner of my eye. I wanted to turn and get a better look, but I didn't want to move and chase it away. Mum had passed 8 years prior, and that's the only person I feel it could have been.
Oh, that's scary.
Do you want to know something scary?
What?
Google Australia's most haunted road.
Oh, no, that stuff gives me the heebie-jeebies.
Do it.
Wakehurst Parkway. That is a scary road.
The Wakehurst Parkway, which is a road I drive on every day. It's the road I learnt to drive on my L's. It's the main link from the Northern Beaches into the city. In fact, when it rains, it closes.
Yeah, so.
A heavy dew closes that bloody thing.
I know.
And it's a major link to the hospital they built up the end of it.
I know.
Work that out. But anyway, if you go into it, there was apparently, there are different versions of the story. I'll go with the one that I was taught. There's a young girl, and she's dressed in white, and she was killed hitchhiking, or she was abducted or something. Anyway, she appears between deep Creek and Middle Creek. So that's just before the Academy of Sport to about 3 k's further on. And on a misty, foggy day, she appears in the middle of the road and people drive straight through her. Or she appears on the back seat of your car.
No, absolutely not. No.
And you look in the rear vision mirror and you see her on your back seat in your mirror.
Yeah.
At the Wakehurst Parkway.
Well, apparently her name was Kelly, and she's terrified motorists over the past 5 decades. Rumours that circulated among locals on Sydney northern beaches has suggested it might be linked to a woman killed in a car crash. Those who have claimed to have seen Kelly say she appears on or beside the 16-kilometre long road late at night and then disappears when motorists swerve to avoid her or look back to check, only to see nothing. You know what? Back in the day, you know when like you used to buy newspapers and they'd have like gifts attached to them, a coin colouring in book, or they used to have stuff like that. I remember I would have been like 10 years old or something, right? And I was over at my cousin's house and they had brought home the newspaper, and the newspaper had attached to it an episode of Supernatural. Do you remember that TV show, Supernatural?
Vaguely.
Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. And this was the Bloody Mary episode. And if you don't know who Bloody Mary is, this is...
She ran a brothel in the musical South Pacific on Bali High.
Wait, actually?
No.
Let me tell you. So,
Anyway, go on.
The mythology...
Rogers and Hammerstein, South Pacific, Bloody Mary is the
I don't know
girl.
that, Luke. The theology or the mythology behind Bloody Mary is that you say Bloody Mary 3 times in the mirror, like looking at yourself, you say it 3 times, and then she appears through, she gets to people through mirrors, so she crawls out of mirrors.
Stop.
And me and my cousin watched this and we were so young. I don't think her parents knew that we were watching it because her parents are very Christian. And I kid you not, I could not look in mirrors for like 10 years, not at nighttime. I could not walk past the mirror at nighttime. And I was like, these newspapers were so unhinged to give that episode out, like, because anyone could have access to it, right? There should have been padlocked up or a warning on it saying, don't let your kids watch this alone.
They used to allow 10-year-old paper boys to deliver not just newspapers, but Playboy and Penthouse as well.
Yeah, that's not surprising.
And then they had to put plastic around it.
Oh, gross.
To keep the stains off.
Stop.
It was so the paper boy couldn't open it.
No, I get it, but either way.
Have you? I've never done it, but have you? Do you know of anyone that's been to a séance and used a Ouija board?
No.
I refuse.
You will never see me using a Ouija board in my life.
No.
I'm not a religious person, but I think there's something to be said about spirituality. I don't know who or what or how it is, right? I don't know enough about it and I haven't had enough, direct experiences. I am not rolling the dice like that. I don't want to find out. If it's not true, great. If it is true, why would you want to risk it?
Ooh, you're playing with fire. I've told you, my son Jacob. You've heard his story.
Yeah.
We've told it on the podcast, haven't we?
Yeah, but give us the recap for people that might not have heard it.
So we were living in Bathurst, and I've gone to Dubbo for a family. It could have been for the Aboriginal knockout, the football. Anyway, so we're having. Jacob was very, very young, 4 or 5, and after the football, we've gone back to my uncle's place, and there's a fire going, and we're eating emu, and there's lots of singing and didgers And anyway, so we eventually get back to Bathurst the next day or the day after. And Jacob was a very sound sleeper. I mean, he was just a prize. He'd go to bed at 7, wake up at 7. Unreal. And he had one of those beds. We bought it at Harvey Norman. It was a Ferrari racing car bed, and it sat on the ground and it had sides on it. So it wasn't high up. It was on the... And one morning, it was 2 o'clock, he's screaming in his room, really screaming. Dad, Mum. I went in there and he was so upset. And I said, what's happened? He said, there was a man in my room. I said, really? And I said, what did he look like? He said it looked like he was covered in mud. And I looked at his mother. And he was really, really upset. And he said he was talking to me. I said, what did he say? He said, I couldn't understand what he was saying. And he was talking in lingo. So I'm freaked out. So I've rung my mother in Dubbo, and the phone, this is not a word of a lie. You've met Irene.
Yeah.
Did she tell you this story?
Yes.
She's backed this up.
Yeah, she's backed it up, yeah.
Ring, ring, ring. Hello, Shane. Your grandfather's just been there, hasn't he? I said, what are you saying? She said, because he was just here.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Do you remember?
That's what I mean by I believe that.
Now, that's when she said your grandfather, she meant my great-grandfather.
Yes,
Her grandfather, who, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about this. He was known to have been a featherfoot.
What's that?
Well, when they lived in Burke, they were drovers. He kept the law. And,
What does that mean?
Well,
He was working for the white man.
No.
Working against the white man.
No.
Oh.
The law enforcement agencies would leave them alone so long as there was someone keeping everyone in tow. And he would dish out the punishments
Oh, okay.
under Bark and G law.
Right.
This is how the story goes. And he was this very spiritual man. He was a leader. And thought to have... Anyway, I don't want to talk about it anymore. But that story, Jacob still remembers it. He's 34 now. And you knew my mother, Irene, and she tells exactly the same story. As my daughter would say, there's no mayo put on that. That's what happened. It was really freaky.
That's what I mean, though. Something else has got to exist out there.
Do you reckon there are aliens? Oh, we're going down another path now.
No, okay, let's move on.
Let us know what you think. 0291289311 or drop us a message. Got a message from Brendan. Just been listening to your interview with Pauline Hanson. Bloody brilliant. A voice of reason for all the people who have grown up here and made our country great. Long-time listener. Keep up the good work.
So since we last spoke to Pauline, which was last week, I don't know if you've seen this, Luke, but she has released a trailer to a movie, and this is an anti-woke movie. Have you heard about it? Let's just watch the trailer. How about that?
The defendant is charged with misogyny in the first degree. He is a white, straight, cisgendered male. I rest my case, Your Honour.
Well, I've heard enough. I sentence the defendant to death. I'm gonna die! Oh, black and wise one, please tell us what to do.
Just as the elders foretold. This is Armageddon. We're all in grave danger. Without our virtue signal, this is no longer a safe space. These will be good thongs, you dog.
You speak of the prophecy.
The chosen one who'll venture out into the real world and reclaim the victimhood from its ancient resting place and wield its awesome power and save the world from the oppressive colonisers to become the coolest, wokest, most compassionate person ever.
I'll do it. I'll accept the call to adventure.
So, Luke, what do you make of that?
I have no idea what to make of that. I have no idea what to make of it. I'm going to have to tell you next podcast. I'm going to have to absorb it. What are they saying?
Well, they're saying that cis white men are vilified and that they're going to be executed if we keep becoming more quote unquote woke, I guess. But I just wish that much energy was put into quite literally the centuries worth of disenfranchisement on so many other minority groups. No one cared that much about it. But when it comes to white men, we care about it.
I'm going to need to absorb it and see it again.
Yeah.
All right?
What do you guys make of it?
Well, they haven't seen it, have they?
Well, they can go, or I'll put the link to the trailer in the description and you can make up your mind for yourself.
All right. You've thrown me.
I know, I've thrown you.
You've thrown me.
I know.
You've thrown the boner. That's a segment.
Please don't. No.
Throw the boner. We could call it, seriously.
Okay. Well,
unnerve Luke Boner.
Send us content and
unnerve.
If you leave Luke speechless, you win a prize.
Yeah.
Now, Luke, as you said at the top of this, we are recording on Australia Day, and we posted a video and we asked people, what does Australia Day mean to them? Let me just read you out a couple of responses.
Gee, they're quick, aren't they?
So this is from Darren. For me, Australia Day marks the beginning of modern Australia, a nation built under British law, institutions, science, medicine, infrastructure, and democratic systems that turned a vast, sparsely populated continent into one of the safest, most prosperous, and desirable countries on earth. Pre-1788, Australia was not a single nation and not a peaceful utopia. It consisted of hundreds of distinct Aboriginal groups with shifting, contested boundaries. Territory changed hands through conflict, defence, negotiation, and loss. Land was fought over long before Europeans arrived. that is documented anthropology, not ideology. History is complex. Reducing it to a slogan like stolen land erases Indigenous agency, ignores intertribal conflict, and replaces evidence with moral theatre.
Wow.
I know, very thought out answer. I can agree. I can agree with some of the points raised there. I'm not sure. I don't know enough about what Australia looked like pre-1788 to know exactly how established Indigenous law was. Obviously, it looked different to us, but some good points raised there. Let me read you out.
It wasn't one Indigenous nation. It was 300. It was like Europe. It was there were borders.
Yeah.
And there were different countries, often different languages. Similarities in languages would cross over as people travelled, but they were different countries.
Yeah. So this one's from TJ's Dog Sport. He says, as a first-generation immigrant myself, I can say that to me it means inclusion and celebrating this great country that provided a life for me and my family. While I acknowledge what happened hundreds of years ago to many countries around the world, including Australia, right or wrong, it has shaped this great country as we know it today, and I'm grateful for that. To me, it's divisive claiming the day is about being invaded.
Yeah.
There's some more here. Willie Bree, you can't change history. Happy Australia Day. Be proud and celebrate. Fraser says, Happy Australia Day. Kevin said, be buggered if I'm going to feel guilty for something people did in the 1700s. So a lot of diverse opinions on here, and we love to see it. So keep them coming.
Keep them coming. We live in a country where you're allowed to have this say. So,
absolutely.
So please, let's do that on this divisive day for some. So I guess it's only divisive if you want to make it divisive. But while it's divisive, I would love to find a date that everyone agrees with, and no one yet has successfully said to me, this is the date. Episode 76, we think.
Well, yeah, we're just going. We're rolling with it now.
Coming up, we're going to try and get inside the very complex head, under the Yakuba and inside the head of Bob Catter.
I'm sitting back, radio on, Lukebona talking. Keeps me rolling along. Stories and laughter that brighten my day. Got that bluesy rhythm, but it's swinging my way. Oh, I got the Lukebona blues. Oh, blues. But they're the kind that chase away the gloom. Tapping my feet, smiling wide. Happy blues, ride with me tonight. From the outback.
Well, you all know the name Bob Catter. Robert Bellarmine Carl Catter. Now, as we know, he's a very outspoken Australian politician. He has served as a Member of Parliament for the Queensland Division of Kennedy since 1993, Father of the House since 2022, active in Queensland state politics, can you believe this, from 1974 to 1992, was a member of the National Party in 2001, after which he left, we'll get to that a little bit later, to sit as an independent. He was born in Cloncurry in Queensland. His father, Bob Catter Sr., was also a politician. He was elected to the Queensland Legislative Assembly at the 1974 state election. He represented then the seat of Flinders. He was then elevated to cabinet in 1983, and that was under the famous Joe Bjelke-Petersen, and served as a government minister until the National Party's defeat back in the 89 state election. But what drives this outspoken man? He always says exactly what's on his mind, a bit like Pauline Hanson. He may not like that comparison, but a lot of Conservative voters are now being attracted to Pauline Hanson because she says what's on her mind. And when Hanson first got into politics, she made news back then for possibly all the wrong reasons. People said she was outrageous, she was racist. But just have a look at her policies, which have not changed since the late 1990s. And she's now attracting more Conservative votes than the Liberal Party, which is in complete disarray. So before we talk about current political issues, which we have to, let's take a deep dive into what makes this bloke tick. He's on the phone again. Bob Catter, always a pleasure to talk to you, because I never know what you're going to say next, and that's why we love you.
God bless all the listeners.
So what drove you to become a politician? Was it your father?
No. I hardly saw my father in his way, politicking all the time, and he was Mayor of Mount Isa and Cloncurry, and, he obviously had to be a lot more in Mount Isa than our hometown. So, no, nothing to do with that. No, I busily making my fortune in mining. I absolutely love mining, and I was prospecting with an old blackfella partner who taught me sort of everything I knew, actually, and we were quite successful in copper mining, the pair of us, and I was buying and selling cattle, making a lot of money. I had a couple other businesses, and even though I was very young, I was very, very ambitious to get my own mining company and float my own mining company, and build up my cattle herd as well. So that's what I was doing, and that was my intense interest centred around those things. What pulled me sideways was Whitlam, and when I wrote Mystery of Australia, I couldn't really understand why I hated Whitlam so much, but I know I did, and I know the rest of Australia did as well. So that's what got me into politics, and I didn't intend to stay. I thought I'd just do 1 or 2 terms, and go back to where I want to be, which is the mining and the cattle too. Because
your father was a Labor politician, but you were a Conservative politician. I mentioned that when you entered state politics. But when Whitlam was elected in 1972, you just said everyone hated him. But they didn't in 72.
You were dead right, and very.
Do you remember the slogan? It's time.
Yeah.
Remember how popular that
was?
It's
a very good call. Very few people know that. Even at that start of the year where he was annihilated, he was on 72% approval ratings. And I know because I remember Bajorky Peterson, my leader, was on 42%. He had this extraordinary popularity. Yeah. Well, by the end of the year, everyone wanted to lynch him. He had the worst defeat, I think, in Australian history. The Depression election was worse than that. But except for the Depression election, it was the worst defeat in Australian history. So I was Robinson Crusoe in hating the beggar. I wanted to get rid of him. And but I didn't intend to stay in politics. I was involved in public life. I was secretary of 8 organisations in Little Cloncurry, and I ran all the rugby league and got it going, and ran all inland North Queensland. Yeah. So anyway, that's where I was when Whitlam came along.
I've got to ask you about Joe Bjelke-Petersen and his wife Flo. Massively popular in Queensland. But then there was the big Joe for Canberra campaign, and I can still see the then Prime Minister Bob Hawke on the Mike Walsh show. It could have been Ray Martin. It would have been Ray Martin hosting at this point, the midday show. And Hawke is going, please, Joe, come to Canberra. Was that a silly idea, the Joe for Canberra campaign?
There was a group called the White Shoe Brigade, and they were sort of sharpies. They weren't bad people, but they just sort of sharpish, and the more presentable people didn't like to be seen with them. But they were at the heartland of that push, Joe for Canberra, and it was just an absolute disaster from start to finish. Joe hadn't thought it out. The party disowned it. It disrupted the Conservative forces in Canberra very badly. It destroyed us, the Country Party, as we were. We changed our name to the National Country Party, but we were still Country Party. And, we were blokes that worked in the mines, had farms, had little businesses. Almost all of us fell into that sort of category, cut cane by hand as young men, or, as I say, worked as labourers in the mines, or that sort of person. And it was a great tragedy, but it was the Joe for Canberra campaign that really brought us unstuck. Joe had secured 42% of the first preference vote and 62% two-party preferred. And but we had ambitious young, the new variety of politician, no interest in anything else except their own advancement. But, most of the blokes that I went in with were like me, they're out there making a quid. But, you got a responsibility to your country. If things are going really bad, well, you better leave the plough for a minute and pick up a rifle,
We'll talk about gun reform in a sec and a few other things now that you've just mentioned that. But it's interesting to see that you became a very popular independent. And I remember in the aftermath of the 2010 hung election, the federal election, you offered a unique range of views on what you called the way forward. And there were two other former National Party MPs, both independents from rural electorates, Tony Windsor and Rob Oakeshott, who decided to support Labor in a hung government. You then gave the Liberal National Coalition your support. Was that the right move?
Maybe the best member of Parliament I ever served with was Tony Windsor. But in that hung Parliament, I have no idea, and I've spent a fair bit of time. I've been so curious about it down in that Armidale-Tamworth area, which is very much heartland of the independence movement, as to what went on. How he went from being the best member of Parliament to being the worst. And he was elected as an independent, and he's a de facto member of the Labor Party. It was very, very tragic, and it was dreadful for Australia. Absolutely dreadful. Instead of using his power to help his country, he used his power just to be a rubber stamp for the ALP. It is quite an extraordinary phenomenon to me. I've never been able to get my head around it.
I'll tell you what Graham Richardson once said to me, Bob Catter, and I'd love your reaction on this. He told me that Malcolm Turnbull had approached Kim Beazley when Kim Beazley became leader of the Labor Party and said, I want to join the Labor Party, and I want to be under one condition. I have a seat in cabinet and I'd like to be your treasurer. What do you make of that? That's what Richo told me.
I wouldn't doubt that for a moment. I wasn't friendly with Malcolm Turnbull or anything, but I do know that he married a Hughes. And if we had aristocracy in Australia, they would be the aristocratic family. They gave 2 suburbs in inner Sydney to the Catholic Church. I mean, how many people are rich enough to give 2 suburbs in inner Sydney to their religious convictions? Very few people. But a most extraordinary family in every way. The Hugheses, the Fatal Shore, best book ever written on our convict forebears. And Lucy Hughes was Mayor of Sydney. She married Malcolm Turnbull. Malcolm Turnbull married her, but I'm not the least bit surprised. Malcolm was in that sort of, teal, wokey sort of position with his politics. Lucy Hughes, for all of the Hughes religious convictions, used to sort of lead the gay Mardi Gras march in Sydney. Not the slightest doubt that was a true story. Not the slightest doubt that was a true story. And, he never denied that he was a member of the Communist Party when he was at university. And it wasn't the Communist Party, it was an affiliated body. And, nothing against that. It was an aberration, really. He never represented the values of the traditional Liberal supporters. And, of course, if Labor has sold out their base, then the Country Party, of course, they're up there with Judas Iscariot. They deregulated all the rural industries, and most of them are gone now. Rural Australia is just in free fall.
Well, I want to get back to that in a sec, but I'm still building up to what makes Bob Catter tick.
Well, I had wonderful education, and I've only met 7 truly great people in my life, and one of them was Sister Thomas, the chief nun at the little convent school I went to for 8 years. We had 8 years primary then in Queensland, and she had a profound effect. Every morning of our lives, we stood in front of the Australian flag and sang, "God bless our lovely morning land, God keep us," folding in. Well, I think you might become a bit patriotic if you stood in front of the flag every morning of your life for 8 years. And the other thing was my own family. One side of the family nearly died chasing gold in the West Australian desert. And the other side of the family, my grandparents went out to Cloncurry in a Common Coast stagecoach in the 1890s. The Calcadoon Wars was still sort of petering on at that stage. About 120 white fellas killed and about 120 black fellas killed in the wars. So, on both sides. And, we lost on mother's side, we lost a son in the First World War. And then we lost another son in the Second World War. So if anyone should be patriotic, and I've lived half my life under gum trees, just living in the bush when I was prospecting. And, of course, people my age, we were at war over Borneo. So I was in a uniform. And then we were at war in Vietnam, I don't know, for about 10 or 12 years or so. And so people my age were in uniform the whole bloody time. But that meant that you're living under the stars most of the time. We weren't in nice barracks or anything. We were out in the bush doing manoeuvres and learning how to be a soldier. So I suppose that background.
Well, it was Whitlam. It was Whitlam that pulled our troops out of Vietnam. Remember that?
I think you've got the same phenomenon going now. For some peculiar reason, that left wing, I hate using that word, but the left wing of the Labor Party, they dislike America and want to dissociate ourselves from America. Well, you haven't read your history books, have you? And I think the two great quotes that are relevant to Australia, and I'm writing my second book at the present moment, a very small book this time. The two great quotes, one from Winston Churchill: those who cannot learn the lessons of history are doomed to once again suffer its misery. Good call. Good call. Yeah. The second quote is from the greatest commentator on warfare and human history, Karl von Clausewitz. And in his landmark book on war, he says, one truism of history is that a people without land will look for a land without people. Well, I don't think we have to spend too much time thinking where the land without people is. If you take out 120-kilometre wide coastal belt starting at Cairns, running down the east coast around to Adelaide, and a little dot around Perth and Darwin, there's only just under 1 million people living on a continent the size of the United States, size of Europe. There's no one living there. And guess where all the water is? In that empty area is where all the water is. People think the vast deserts. Yeah, well, that's not the situation in North Queensland. No vast deserts there. It's heavy rainfall country right across. And similarly in Northern Territory. So empty land. Not too sure where the people without land are, but I sure know where the land without people is. And it's just not in the Australian consciousness, the vulnerability. And also in terms of taking into account lifestyle, Australians are the wealthiest people on earth. I mean, they enjoy, most of them, quarter acre of land. They enjoy air-conditioned houses. They enjoy 2 toilets. They're an hour away from a big city centre. Work. When you put all those things together, all right, Japan and the United States have a bigger income, per capita income, but they haven't got those other attributes that we've got. So we're the richest people on earth. And here we are, a little enclave of Europeans living on the edge of Asia. This is just not a good situation. We badly need population, and we're going the other way. Within 20 years, we will have reached a situation where there will be for every 20 deaths, there'll only be 15 births. So we're a vanishing race.
What are your thoughts on immigration? If Australians are choosing not to breed, how do we build a tax base?
I would stop migration completely because it is so bad, it is irreparable. I mean, how you could let 2 people who are clearly, from that Hamas ISIS mob into the country, then let them take a year off to go to a training base for terrorists and then let them back into the country, and then give them 3 registered firearms. I mean,
6.
6. I stand corrected. The immigration system is so bad that you just stop and press the start button down the track. And what we're saying is no migration without assimilation. Do they come from a country with democracy, rule of law, Christianity? I make no secret for saying that, but Buddhism, Sikhs, very similar religions, love your neighbour, make the world a better place, that sort of
Jews aren't Christians?
Well, I should have said Judeo-Christians, shouldn't I? Do they come from a country with egalitarian traditions and industrial awards? No. So what the hell are you letting them into this country for? They live in little enclaves in Sydney and Melbourne, racial, ethnic enclaves, and I don't hesitate to say that mob from the Middle East and North Africa, they hate us. And they're not going to change. And they believe that they have to change us. That's what they believe. And they're going to 2 cities where there's no work. All the factories, processing plants have all gone. So there's no work for them. There's no accommodation for them. And yet that is what is going on. So I just say, and it was going on under the Liberals as well as Labor. Labor's infinitely worse, but was going on under the Liberals as well. So I think one of the reasons that Hanson is riding so high, she's always been the anti-migration champion. Well, might not agree with it on anything else, but I most certainly am preaching the gospel as far as anti-migration goes now. And you say, well, where are you going to get your population from? In all of Australian history, I don't think we've placed such a burden upon young women. I mean, she's got to be a mother. She's got to be a wife. She's got to work 36, 40-hour week. Got to be a housekeeper, a cook, a banker, an economist for the family. I don't know how young women do this. I really don't. That burden has got to be changed. And I've put out, and I profoundly believe it, and I'm really surprised because I haven't got a kickback on it. Every woman at birth gets $65,000. People say, well, we know we're having the kids now. No, they're already having the kids. They have the child for the $6,000 birthing payment. But if you want the vast bulk of Australian people to have babies, which they're not having, and I listen to young kids and they say, oh, well, we're going to get married, when we settle down and can get a house. And, so we're not having kids until we, just a little more settled down and a bit more on our feet, and got a house. Yeah. Well, they won't get a house. So, but I think a very substantial amount of money has to be moved in a sector. And the other thing, it's so unfair. A dink, double income, no kids. Well, they're going to take home disposable income of $75,000 each. Each of them's got $75,000 to spend as they like after they've paid tax. But if you're a single income number of kids, then your per capita income is $15,000. So the question becomes, do you want a disposable income of $75,000 or a disposable income of $15,000? Needless to say, Australians are not having kids. So income splitting and $65,000 on birthing, there's no doubt in my mind that will change things around very dramatically. And we've got 400,000 births a year. But I think those 2 measures will lift that to over 1 million a year. And it changes the psychology. Now, the other thing is all regulatory oversighting of subdivisions has got to go, except, industrial versus suburban. Except for that, no. If I want to go on a piece of land that has no service attached, that's my business, not yours. And mostly where people live in Australia, you've got a big tank buried in the backyard. You've got enough water to carry you through the year. You don't need electricity anymore. You've got solar powers and batteries. The restrictions on subdivisions, I would say, are just bad in other states, but in Queensland, they're horrific. Towns under the old mining law cost you about $25 to do a subdivision and about 15 minutes. And now it will take you maybe 3 years and about 150,000 to do a subdivision. I mean, you've got to find out from the local tribe, First Australian tribe. Well, that's rather interesting because we haven't had a tribe in Australia for 150 years. Then you've got to go and get the Greenies to agree, whoever the Greenies are, and 101 other things, which just, to get a piece of land in Queensland is nigh on bloody impossible, and it'll cost you couple 100,000. That's in outlying areas. I'm not talking about city areas.
You just mentioned Pauline Hanson, and I did in my introduction, and you're often compared to Pauline Hanson, not necessarily with policy, sometimes, yes, but because you don't care what people think of you. You say exactly what's on your mind and you stick with it. Do you mind being compared to Pauline Hanson?
I mind very much. I've written a history book, The Story of Our Country. I have put in intimately detailed reports on what needs to be done. The giant Bradfield scheme, which changes the weather in Australia.
Something funny happened with your phone, and you're back with me now. It was okay. Well, I was going to save this for later, but let's do that, the Bradfield scheme, because you mentioned how precious water is. I mean, I think you can live without electricity and generate your own. You can virtually live off the grid. If worst came to worst, you could live without oil, but you cannot live without water. And massive amounts of water fall in the top end of Queensland during the wet season, and most of it runs off roofs, down roads and back into the ocean, and the only way to get it back is through a desal plant, or if you're smart enough, you have a rain tank. Should we be looking at utilising this very precious resource, using the Bradfield scheme? Because when it rains in Queensland, months later, Lake Eyre fills up. I mean, it's unbelievable. Should we be building dams, harvesting this water and then piping it or getting it somehow to where we need the water further south and west?
Yeah, I'd say that 10 or 20% of the surface area of America is irrigated under pasture or under crops. Or I'd say about half of 1% in Australia, or even less than that, would be under pasture or crops. Now, let me be very specific. The nation's economy rested on wool and not ancient history. In 1990, wool was significantly bigger than coal. In 1990, that's not ancient history. It was 6,000 million a year, our biggest export earner, and coal was 5,900 million a year. At that point, it was significantly bigger. You know, you talk about Jockey Peterson. We were a coal importing country when he became Premier of Queensland. Within 17 years, we're the biggest coal exporting state on earth. What an incredible achievement. But he was building dams everywhere, starting in his own electorate in southeast Queensland. But they were creeping up to us, the Emerald Dam, very big dam, irrigation scheme in central Queensland, and then the Burdekin Dam, which sadly is right on the coast, but all the same. Then he was stabbed in the back, and we haven't built a dam in Australia, not just in Queensland, in Australia for development purposes in 35 years.
It's incredible, isn't it? It is incredible. Bob Catter is with us. We're having a look at what makes Bob Catter tick and what he's thinking today. So just back to Hanson, because I do want to move on, but why do you think so many Conservative voters are heading towards One Nation at the moment, according to the polls?
I think that, and we'll have to become a national party. I'm fighting and arguing about that now, but we'll have no alternative but to go down the same road that she has gone down. But I think some very, very rich people are pulling the puppet strings there, and we will not have that advantage politically. We just don't pander to the rich and powerful, not sort of people that we have in our party. We have to go down that pathway. And, but, for our popularity, I mean, the whole of Australia are just enraged by them bringing these people. I'm not going to beat around the bush, from the Middle East and from North Africa. And, as a published historian, I can lead with my chin. I mean, they have a consistent pattern of behaviour, which is brutal violence, killing people. And look, no further than the last few years. They murdered over 3,000 people in the Twin Towers. They murdered 1,200 people having a good time at a dance and a party in Israel. They murdered 15 people having a good time here in Australia. I mean, how many pieces of evidence do you need to say these people are seriously dangerous? I mean, seriously dangerous. And that is why, Hanson has a lot of wind in her sails, because she's been anti-migration consistently and continuously since she entered the political arena. Sadly, she went there into Parliament, with some unfortunate images concerning First Australians. The anti-migration parties, their time has come. We've always been anti-migration, but we've got other things that we're interested in doing.
Let's talk about what's happened at the moment, and that is the disintegration of the coalition. It's the second time the coalition has split in less than 12 months. Should Susan Lee have seen this coming? Who do you think is in the right here, David Littleproud and the Nationals or Susan Lee and the Liberals?
Yeah, it's an interesting question that you ask, because I got a broken foot, a bloody dog wobbling around.
It's a brave dog that bites Bob Catter, because you're just as likely to bite it back.
The first person I ran into was hard case matter of London, and she said, "How's the dog getting on?"
The dog's got rabies now.
Anyway, forget about that. But I had to sit in the chamber. But I sit next to Rebecca Sharkey and Andrew Wilkie. Andrew's an independent from Tasmania, and Rebecca's an independent from Adelaide Hills. But I said to Wilkie, I said, "How are you going to vote on this?" He said, "I honestly don't know." "How are you going to vote?" I said, "I don't know either." See, they want to shut up the imam in a mosque in Sydney, who, from every story, is preaching hate and violence against the people of Australia. And they want to shut him down and shut him up. They've moved this legislation to achieve that purpose, and also the sort of poison that's being fed into that father and son that murdered all those people at Bondi. They want to get at that, right? But by doing that, they are launching laws which most certainly have serious implications for freedom of speech. And that was why it wasn't just, the National Party that was confused and the Liberal Party that was confused. But, because Labor, they're not going to be confused. They do as they're told. But if I had to vote again tomorrow, I would be wondering which way I should vote. I mean, I know that in this case, the government is doing something that needs to be done to shut that BAST down. But on the other hand, to do that without interfering with freedom of speech is nigh on impossible. And as a person that's drafted legislation, as a senior minister in the Queensland government, I'm very familiar with drafting legislation. And as an independent in the federal parliament, we always have to draft our own legislation, but very, very difficult. And that was the reason for the confusion. The other thing is, it is a really weird front bench. Outside of the big three, iron ore, coal and gas, the next biggest export item is cattle, beef. Susan Ley moved in the parliament to stop all live animal exports, and still believes that, I've seen her doing interviews, and she said, "I won't resign from my principles," but the party says we're not going to do that, and I abide by that. So we got a Prime Minister who wants to know live animal exports. When pictures of the cattle on the ships was put in front of David Littleproud, he burst out crying. Now, those are two people leading the conservative forces in Australia. And needless to say, the people have no faith in them. And as for Angus Taylor, he's told to put emergency tanks, because we only got 2 weeks supply of petrol in Australia, and he was ordered by Cabinet to put emergency tanks in. And he did. He put the emergency tanks in Texas. And I said, oh, that's good, Texas pretty central, Brisbane and Sydney and that. But not Texas in Queensland, Texas in the United States. I mean, emergency tanks, it'd take 2 months to get through the Suez Canal, Panama Canal, and get to Australia.
We'll get to Angus Taylor in a second and possible Andrew Hastie, but I just wanted to, you know what it takes to have legislation passed by a party. So what happens is, for those who don't know, you have the government of the day, and in this case Labor. They draft legislation that goes to the opposition, and they then have an opportunity to say either yes, we'll go ahead with that, or no, here's our version, or we'll just block it. And it goes to, if the opposition is the coalition, it goes to a joint, I'm going to say that word again, a joint party meeting, which did not happen. The Liberal Party in their party room put together their version. The National Party in their party room then said, we want amendments and these are our demands, but there wasn't a joint party meeting. Then there was a joint shadow cabinet meeting, but the National Party, which is a separate party, even though they share conservative values, said we are not in agreement with this as the National Party. So therefore, members of the National Party in the shadow cabinet are not in agreement with this. So having said that, that's the way it works. But having said that, you had 2 senior Liberals abstain, Michaela Cash and Ted O'Brien. 2 senior Liberals abstained. They didn't enter the chamber. They did not vote. And I'm just wondering why those 3 National Party senators, why they didn't abstain. Why did they cross the floor and vote with the Greens? Why did they not just say the National Party is not in agreement with all of this? We're going to go back to the drawing board before our members in the shadow cabinet can all agree. Why didn't that happen?
Yeah, I think that, I'm pretty certain that the National Party senators are very, very toey. They're going to lose their positions to One Nation. It was all right for them to hide behind the Liberal coattails, but now they're going to pay a very heavy price for hiding behind the Liberal coattails. So, political fear led them to decide to make a stand. It was clear to me that was what was happening, and people may not share that view, but to me that was exactly what was happening. The National Party of today are rabid free market, more so than the Liberals, more so than Labor. But the party was founded on the exact opposite proposition. I said to Andrew, gee, he was an independent. He wasn't National Party. Why'd you get out? And he said, I was brought up Country Party, handed out of vote cards when I was 6 years of age for the Country Party. And every single principle we have, the National Party is the exact opposite principles. I said, we did right. Jack McEwen was the father of protection and development, which really go hand in hand. He said, there's no such thing as protection. There's only nursery protection, meaning, you just to get an industry going, you don't keep the tariffs there, was his philosophy. But, there are things like underwear. When I found out that bonds were rolling their swag and going to China, I went out and bought 30 sets of underwear. I don't like the idea of buying one from China.
Yeah.
But, if I was the boss of Australia, I would put a punitive tariff on underwear, on critical building materials. Almost all of our timber is being imported. Structural timber is being imported from overseas. Necessitous industrial materials.
Yes, but you see, Bob Catter, the trouble with tariffs, and I get what you're saying, especially to protect domestic industry, but the diplomatic problem with tariffs, as you know, is that if you put a tariff on a product coming in from another country, chances are they'll swing around and put a tariff on something you export to them. It could be beef, it could be sheep, it could be, you know, you see what I'm saying? It's a diplomatic.
No. We stop bananas from coming in. And
so we should. I think we should stop seafood as well.
You know, about 40% of our seafood now is coming from overseas.
We're girt by seafood.
We have the biggest coastline of any country on earth, and we have the lowest seafood catch of any country on earth.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
It really is, and it's immoral. And we'll pay a price for it ultimately. But you know, when you say tariffs, no, I'm not saying tariffs. I'm saying that necessities of life, essentials like industrial water pumps, deliver the water from the river to your house, underwear, you know, I mean, petrol. And petrol is a great example. The biggest import item by far and away is petrol. We're the one country on earth that can do it easy. We're 32% self-sufficient in oil, not petrol, oil.
Yeah.
And we're the biggest grain exporters, arguably, in the world, and one of the biggest sugar exporters in the world.
Yeah.
Well, ethanol comes from sugar.
And uranium and coal.
Rubber tyres can be converted and should be converted into oil, for example, to quote but one example of but instead of doing that, we import $45 billion worth of petrol every year and diesel. But, you know, I mean, the other thing is, well, if we have a wharfie strike, well, we're going to walk, are we?
That's right. I don't know how many Australians actually know this, but if all of a sudden the petrol and the oil tankers stopped, Australia has about 3 weeks of fuel under the ground ready to go.
I mean, NRMA did a wonderful job bringing that out. And the government ordered, I've said this before, the alternative treasurer and effectively the deputy leader, Angus Taylor, they directed him to put emergency tanks in when the NRMA said, hey, you only got 2 weeks supply in Australia. You know, but think about that. If there's the Middle East decide to have a go at us, well, heaven only knows how many times that's happened. If there's a hiccup in Singapore or if there's wharfies go on strike, I mean, China decides to give us a bit of a hit. They've got their warships circling Australia at the present moment. I mean, I don't know about other people, but on 2 kilometre walk from the local supermarket, I think I'll probably starve to death, but probably a lot worse than cities anyway. But, you know, I mean, who's running the show? I mean, who is running the show? Bit of comic humour. I'm in the Meena Creek pub with a bunch of rough nuts and 3 or 4 of them cane coggies, but they worked in the mill and they cut cane harvesters. Well, anyway, but one of them yelled out, hey, Bobby, yes? And just who is driving the bus? And I said, I'll take that on notice, Jimmy. And I thought about it. And I yelled out, hey, Jimmy, nobody's driving the bus. And he said, that's just what I effing well thought. You know, no one's running the country. And I can give you example after example after example. But this is very important. Kim Carr, the leader of the Senate, and a person respected by both sides of Parliament, before he left Parliament, I'm, you know, greatly flattered by this. He said, hey, can you come down for a cup of tea? And I said, oh, yeah. And so I was making my cup of tea. He said, Bob, governments today will not govern. You will not be able to get them to govern. Just recently, we had Mount Isa mines closing down because they get all their power and all their processes for phosphate and for copper and silver, lead, zinc and everything. They need gas, and all their electricity comes from gas. They're paying $16.60 for their gas when their competitors, Russia and America, are paying $6. Now, it just can't go on.
I know it is amazing. I want to talk about how Australia faces the world in the very near future and into the distance in just a second. But just while we're on the topic of Susan Lee and David Littleproud, Bob Catter, what is the future of conservative politics, federal politics, in this country now?
Well, I mean, everyone's looking at Andrew
Hastie.
Yeah, Andrew Hastie.
Andrew Hastie and Angus Taylor. Yeah, and I speak to David Littleproud regularly, and I'm telling you now, I get a feeling I think he's always thought that Susan Lee, even though she may have all the great intentions, is not gaining traction, and the coalition will not win government with her as leader, and so they need a stronger Liberal leader. The trouble is you've got to put up with factions. I mean, Susan Lee's a moderate. I think the Conservatives are sick of moderate thinking. That's why Conservative voters are just peeling off towards One Nation, and that might just be a fad. I don't know. I don't know. But what do you think is the future of Conservative politics? Or has the whole landscape of Conservative politics in Australia now, has it changed? I mean, you look at the popularity of Nigel Farage in Great Britain, who is a voice representing a conservative voice, and is drawing great traction. So what do you think is the future of conservative politics and the future of the coalition? Can One Nation win government in its own right?
Well, I'm traditional Labor. Theodore Labor would categorise me very accurately. I'm sitting in my living room here looking at a big picture of Theodore looking down at me, easily the most important person in Australian history. I didn't say that. Malcolm Fraser said that. I didn't say that. Paul Keating said that. But it'd be the only thing I'd ever agree with either of them on that comment. But, one of the Labor members of Parliament said, your old man lived and died a Labor man. Yeah, but Theodore Labor, modern Labor, he hated modern Labor. And this bloke sort of looked sad, because he was the Theodore Labor sort of person. And, they believed in development. I mean, everything really was about creating jobs for the people. Now, our party says, you give us the balance of power and Queensland's coal production will double because we'll open up the Galilee Basin. It's huge, doubles Queensland's coal production, the Galilee. They won't do it, Liberals or Labor, because, it'll wreck the planet. Of course, we all know that coal mining and coal-fired power stations will wreck the planet. Well, I don't, but conventional wisdom. We're development-oriented, under Jockey Peterson, that traditional Queensland, call it Theodore Labor or call it Country Party, but they're identical sort of from point of view of policy. We were building a dam every year, putting down 1,000 kilometres of rail line into the mines, mostly coal mines. Every 2.5 years, we doubled production of mangoes and oranges and seafood and, it was just extraordinary what was done during that period of time. Quite extraordinary. What happened in 1992? Keating got control out from under Hawke. Now, whether Hawke was just a drunken womanizer, but he was pretty Australian, I'd have to give him that. The thing wasn't running off the rails. When Keating got in, he was a rabid free marketeer. Now, you and I both know, Luke, that every intelligent person is a free marketeer. But when every other country has got average support levels of 40%, and you've got support levels of 4%, you were just asking for trouble.
It's funny you should talk about free markets, because I did want to move you on to somebody you mentioned earlier, and that is Donald Trump. And it's once again a tricky dance, diplomatic dance we dance here in Australia, because we need and have survived by the military protection that the United States affords us. However, our biggest trading partner is China. And it seems to me you've got Donald Trump, if you do something he doesn't like, he whacks a tariff on, and it's been proven that it's actually hurt his own economy. Now, I found it really interesting that the Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney, at the World Economic Forum in Davos in Switzerland was talking about how Canada is now reaching out as a middle power like Australia. And if you've got to survive on a huge power that holds huge economic and military power, you're in their debt and you are in trouble if all your eggs are in that basket. And he's talking about moving into other markets. Now, we've done that with China and other countries around the world, yet we do, as I say, rely on America for military protection. Now, it seems to me that most of the free world is saying, Donald Trump, hands off Greenland. What are you thinking? And Trump seems to have backpedaled on that a little bit. What do you make of Donald Trump? Does he scare you, or is he good for us here in Australia, Bob Catter?
I think that he is just a wonderful for the United States. And he stops the Latinos coming in from Mexico. And I thought he can't possibly win this election because, the Latinos, which is a big segment of the American population now, are not going to vote for him. Well, just the opposite was true. He got massive majorities amongst the Latinos. So they didn't want, they got in, but they don't want the other Mexicans coming in to wreck life for them in America. I don't know what the logic was, but it was rather fascinating for me. But he stopped those people from pouring in from Central America, and they're quite mad. I don't think they're as bad as the Middle East or North Africa, but, the violence that is prevalent and the corruption that's prevalent in all those Central American countries, like a bit different when you get down to Brazil and Argentina and those places, but all that Central American coming into the United States, I think it's wonderful what he's done there. Now, a more aggressive economic policy and motor cars would be a good example. El Cheapo motor cars running in. Well, this is so unfair. They've got people working for $5 a day in China, right? So what's America going to do? What, push their wages down to $5 a day? And when Keating said he's going to free the market, it was 6 o'clock in the morning at the ABC radio on. No one listens to it now, but they did then. And he said, we will have the freest economy on earth. All support levels, all protection is going. And I threw a boot to the wall and said a word that my mother told me I was never to use about 6 times. And I thought, now I'm going to have to fight for the bloody workers. The workers have the unions and the ALP. But now I'm going to have to fight for them because there's only two alternatives here. One, we're bankrupt, or two, our wages go down to match those from the other countries. And you have a look at the banana industry. It's good to look at. The biggest generic item sold in Woolworths and Coles in Australia is bananas. It is vital to the kitchen, Australian kitchen, bananas. The National Party, which is the party of free market, they destroyed all of rural industry in Australia, specifically Tim Fisher, but particularly John Anderson. And Howard, in the end, forced him out. Well, there was the issue of impropriety and allocations of money. He didn't put in his own pocket, but forget about all that. But, John Anderson took the protection away from sugar. Well, all right. Every country on earth is getting $700 a tonne for their sugar. Europe, strangely enough, are the biggest sugar producers, heavily subsidised. Brazil is cross-subsidising from ethanol. The United States, same as Europe, massively subsidised. So everyone's on $700 a tonne. The Europeans and, India, but their wages are $5 a week in India. So that's what we're up against. Now, all right, if you want a free market, well, that's what they did. And within 10 years, every sugar mill in Australia, remember, this is the 5th biggest industry in Australia, sugar. We're one of the biggest producers in the world. And you start in northern New South Wales and you go up the whole coastline to north of Cairns, except for a bit of outer Rockhampton, is all under sugar. massive sugar production. Well, all the mills were Australian-owned in Queensland.
Yeah.
Now they're all foreign-owned. Now, in sugar, you've got a monopoly. You can't put the sugar on the back of the truck and drive it up the road, to the next mill. It deteriorates very quickly, sugar. So you've got to sell to the local mill. So local mill's got monopoly. They can pay you whatever they like. And that is what has happened. Needless to say, more and more now of the actual farms are being owned by foreigners as well as the sugar mills. You're seeing the whole of the industry owned by foreigners. In 1992, all of our petrol was produced in Australia, petrol, diesel, avgas. About 2 or 3% is produced in Australia. Our total exports is 600 billion, and 45 billion of that boomerangs back out to buy fuel when we should be self-sufficient in fuel. For security purposes, security of supply.
We should be self-sufficient. Why we don't have offshore oil wells in our waters, drill and make and refine our own oil is beyond me. But we can talk about that another day. But just getting back to my original question, Bob Catter, you said that Donald Trump in your opinion, is good for America, and some people might argue with that, but I'm after your opinion. Is Donald Trump good for Australia?
Yes, and I'll use a cliche. As General Motors boss said, if it's good for anything that's good for General Motors is good for America. Well, quite frankly, anything that's good for America is good for Australia.
All right, this is where it gets interesting. Power B's already doing the heavy lifting. Full meal replacement, chocolate flavour. It really fills you up. And it's the only shake in Australia with Nature Bee's Power Pollen inside it. You've got premium grass-fed whey protein, 4 strains of probiotics, vitamins designed to keep you fueled without overthinking it, 2 shakes a day alongside a balanced diet and exercise. Done. But here's the kicker. Nature Bee's running a bucket list competition. And it wraps up Friday, January 30. We're talking about scoring a $20,000 life-changing travel experience. Amalfi Coast, Egypt, the Great Barrier Reef, the Grand Canyon by helicopter, anything you want. 10 more winners get gift cards and Nature Bee prizes as well. And all you need to do is spend $79.90 for your chance to win. All you need is a valid passport and a little bit of initiative. And yep, it's backed with a 100% money-back guarantee. Click the links in the description. Head to naturebee.com.
Remember, I come out of the beef industry, but that gold and beef are our 2 biggest exports outside of iron ore, coal and gas. But we gave the gas away, so it's not worth 2 bob to us. Coal, they're closing it down. In Queensland, the Liberal Party have said, oh, no, we're for coal. We're not closing it down. Like hell he's not. He's kept the tax. And they've already closed 3 major mines in Queensland. The industry's closing down and can't pay that tax. The charges in Queensland are double the charges in New South Wales, which are amongst the highest in the world. So no one can economically produce coal under those circumstances.
So you think Donald Trump ultimately is good for Australia?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I'm certain that he's good for America, because the things he's doing there is exactly what I would do in Australia if I was here. I would be building Australian industry. But the vast bulk of it, they can mobilise capital in the United States. All of our capital is locked up in the superannuation monies. They, quite frankly, are just a bunch of slithering Sydney share market sharks. All of our superannuation is being used to buy and sell shares backwards and forwards to each other. It's a giant Ponzi scheme. I remember I was talking to Kevin Rudd, and Kevin has his good moments. There's a lot of bad moments too, but he said, John Maynard Keynes said, the stock market is a roulette wheel. Well, whether it's a Ponzi scheme or a roulette wheel, I don't want my savings that are supposed to be there for when I retire going into speculation. Wise governments, 50% had to go into government securities. That money was used for development. How did the Bajocki-Peterson, Leo Ilcher government, how did they build, 10,000 kilometres of railway line? How did they build 1,000 dams and weirs? Where'd they get the money from to do all this? Out of superannuation. 60% of all superannuation had to go to government securities. So we took our 60% and used it to develop our state. Not for self-indulgence. You won't be able to have the dual-lane high-speed highway because we've got to build the economy, and then we can afford to do that. That was the attitude of the Australian people and Australian governments up till the 1990s. That was the attitude of the Australian people, and that was how it worked. But now that money is not there. I mean, China, it's not just cheap wages. I mean, if they want to get into petrol, now they will build giant, massive refineries, economies of scale. I mean, they will build refineries doing 200,000 megalitres, where we had thought 20,000 megalitres was big. Not that we had any 20,000 megalitre refineries, but still. It's the freeing up of capital for development that is so vitally important. We had access to that capital in Queensland through those halcyon years of Bajocki-Peterson. We're building dams and rail lines and all these mines and all those other things that we were doing. We were a coal importing country when Bajocki-Peterson was appointed Premier.
You were saying that. Yeah.
A coal importing country.
Yeah. I wanted, at the beginning of our chat, I said I wanted to get to your thoughts on the gun reform laws which were passed. And you're once quoted, and tell me if I'm wrong, because I don't want to get you wrong, but did you once claim that you once bought an assault rifle while shopping for socks?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. In Queensland, we had no gun laws at all, except for concealable firearms. So I went in to buy a pair of socks. I was on holidays to the Gold Coast for a week, and I went in to buy a pair of socks and they had AK-47 rifles in the sports store. So I bought an AK-47 rifle, best killing machine in the world, and 350 rounds of ammunition. But I threw it in the back of the Volkswagen, little car I had, and drove around all day. Service paradise with the AK-47 in the back seat of the car.
What year was this?
Oh, this would have been, in the 80s, 90s. 70s or 80s. No, it would have been 70s or 80s. But no, but I want to make this point. So, guns kill people. We must ban guns. Well, you can walk in to a sports store and buy an AK-47. Yeah, she didn't have to give you a name or registration numbers, anything. It was just like instead of buying a pair of socks, I bought an AK-47. Now, this is the important point. There were 8 deaths with guns in Queensland when there were no gun laws at all. In Victoria, with draconian gun laws, that same year, there were 54 deaths with guns. It is really weird. Where you ban guns, you have more deaths with guns. North Dakota, biggest gun-owning state in the world, I checked up how many deaths with guns they had. And for the 2 years I was checking up, they had no deaths with guns. The number of people being killed with guns in America is huge. But that's in Chicago and Los Angeles and Washington, D.C., where guns are virtually banned. And it's the same phenomenon in Europe. Switzerland, where every single house by law has a gun. When I last looked, it's a long time ago now, the lowest death rate with guns in Europe. And East Germany, where guns were banned, their neighbours, in fact, they have a common language, they have the highest death rate with guns. Now, it's really weird, but that is the reality of it. When you ban guns, you get more deaths with guns. I was being interviewed on a program such as your own. He said, that's ridiculous. Why would that be? And I said, well, I don't know, but in Victoria and England, they banned sex, but they had the biggest population explosion in English history. So I don't know. Tony, gosh, he said, on that note, we will leave. But obviously, if you ban guns, it breeds a fascination with guns or something like that. I don't know. But I'll tell you what, if I was a person who went around shooting people, I wouldn't be too keen on shooting people if I knew that they could shoot back. There's another principle here completely differently. And I said this to Parliament. I said, whenever the wisest men in history have sat down to write a document, which is their Bill of Rights for their country, they put in the right to bear arms. The American Constitution has the right to bear arms. Magna Carta has the right to bear arms. Archbishop Langton, Magna Carta. What I say constantly is you people will not rest until the only people that have the guns are the people in uniforms. And we know what sort of society that is. We know what sort of society that is.
But Bob, I'm just looking at the Bureau of Statistics because it's interesting that you say what you've just said because, of course, in 1996, Australia experienced massive gun reform because of Port Arthur. There was a massive buyback program. It removed over 650,000 firearms from circulation. And according to the...
Including my AK-47.
Well, I'm not surprised you're driving around with it in the back of a V-dub in the Gold Coast with all that ammunition. You're amazed when you went in to buy socks. But in the Fair Income Department, according to the Bureau of Statistics, it shows that Australia's 96 gun reforms, including the buybacks I just mentioned, has led to significant decreases in firearm deaths. And then we had the mass shooting at Bondi on December 14. So according to the Bureau, the 96 reforms did have a huge effect on gun deaths here in Australia.
I very heavily study statistics. For what it's worth, I did economics at the University of Queensland. Statistics, I just got a young bloke on and I said, look, mate, you've got to go in depth if you want to, and you've got to come with a very cynical and skeptical attitude when you're getting statistics. They're doctored up in ways you can't. The immigration is a good example. Don't worry about it, immigration figures. They're irrelevant. Student visas. I just with a lovely family. Actually, I opened up a business in North Queensland, and I was just having dinner with them, and they'd only been in Australia a couple of years. And I said, it was not a rude question. What visa did you come in on? She said, student visa, of course. You get them is no, you never get knocked back on a student visa. And you can bring your whole family in on a student visa. Well, I put the question in the House to Tony Abbott, and he was quite stunned when I gave the figures out of how many people were coming in on student visas, how many were going home. Of those people going home, a bit of comic humour. I'm in a taxi in Brisbane. The bloke's about 54, if I had to put his age, somewhere in the mid-50s. And I said, what subject are you doing at university? And I didn't say, are you at university? I said, what subject are you doing? He said, I'm doing hospitality in the country, 25 years.
25 years doing hospitality.
Yeah.
It could have been worse. It could have been an arts degree.
Well, the point of the story is anyone can walk in this country anytime they feel like it, and and this is where the statistics lie. They give you the immigration statistics, which are irrelevant. The people coming into this country under other visas, and student visas being the really huge one, but they dwarf the figures. I just want to make this point to you, Luke. I thought when you became an independent, I couldn't stay in the party. It was a free market party, and I was brought up in the country party. Completely opposites. So I was left an alternative to get out. And no independent ever got re-elected, so I was walking in my open grave. But that was better than walking down the street trying to look people in the eye when I was living a bloody lie. So walked into my political grave. But funnily enough, those first election, independents got re-elected. Now they always get re-elected. So I think, you're looking at a parliament that there will be more and more independent type people. But they fall into that category where they want development and jobs for their people. Not building wind farms and solar panels, buying solar panels, sorry. We don't build them. Well, the wind farms, we don't build them either. They fall into a different category. They want to see jobs. I don't want to speak for Di Lee, but I'm sure that she would want the bonds factories back. And that's something, it's an essential. And we should have laws that make sure that they are produced in Australia. Industrial water pumps, we should have laws that make sure that they in Australia. Construction steel and construction timber that is produced in Australia. All the other things, I don't feel so strongly about. The other things, petrol, I feel very strongly about. And it's so easy to do. Also, a couple of thousand people die every year in Sydney and Melbourne, to a lesser extent Brisbane, from emissions. Every country on earth has ethanol in their petrol tanks. And I mean every country on earth. France, England, Germany, Brazil, United States, Japan, China, they've all got ethanol in their petrol tanks. I'm not so sure about China, but, they want to be self-sufficient in petrol. No, it's because people die from emissions. There's no oxygen in petrol. You don't get a proper burn. In ethanol, there's oxygen. IMO, when he introduced it in New South Wales, said, I can't go another day with thousands of deaths on my conscience, people that just simply don't have to die. So today we're introducing 10% ethanol. Well, he's enlightened, intelligent, and well-informed. The people that followed him are not. And so around about 1,000 people die. And that's the AMA talking, by the way, Australian Medical Association, not me. They did everything humanly possible with the NRMA to get ethanol put in the petrol tanks in Australia. But there's another consideration completely. Like Brazil's on about 60% ethanol. They're paying $1.09 for their petrol. The last time I looked, we were paying $1.83. I'm going sideways.
You are going a bit side. In my family, we call that going bing bong. You're going a bit, as my daughter would say, you're going a little bit bing bong. Bob, I've got to ask you one last question. Are you ready?
Yeah.
And I want you to think really carefully about this, okay?
Yep.
What would Bob Katter today in the year 2026, what would Bob Katter today say to a 16-year-old Bob Katter if you could go back in a time machine? What advice, Bob, would you give 16-year-old you?
I don't hesitate for a second. Fight for your country. Fight for your country. Fight for your country. That's what I say to him. Fight for your country. And, there's a dozen fronts on which you need to fight. One of the senior commanders of the armed forces in Australia is newly appointed. And I always ask people, what's the first three things you do if you're the boss of Australia? And he said, the first thing I do is change the attitude of the Australian people. Yeah. Basically, they don't work and they don't have an incentive to work. Unions have been taken over by people with political agendas, coal miners, and that would be a classic example. We've gone down from 183,000 a year to 138,000 a year. It's dangerous work. It's dirty work. You live away from home because they're all FIFO mining now. So you have no home life. You don't see a kid play football on the weekend. Don't see a daughter at the Stedford. You have no home life, and the home almost invariably splits up. That is Australia today. And that's where the attitude is what needs to change. Advance Australia fair. So what's that mean? It means that every boy, when he turns 14, gets a combat rifle. He's taught how to use it. It's kept in the school armoury, later on in the town armoury.
I wasn't expecting that.
There's millions of rifles. When I said that, I had slack period for publicity. And I thought, I'll get plenty out of this. No, everyone agreed with me. I nearly died of shock. Everyone agreed with me. Self-reliance. I represent more than half of Australia's water runoff. And yes, we have a dam at the mouth of the Burdekin River, not where it should be, up the top of the Burdekin River. I mean, it just serves a little population at the mouth of the river. And there was a dam built in 1954 at Mariba. Now, that's all the water we use. We've with half Australia's water runoff, and that's all we use the water for. And those floods tear away everything on the banks. You know, they're constantly eroding massive areas of land. And, when we go to meet Jesus, I say, I gave you all this beautiful water. I gave this huge black soil plain, and what did you do with it? On the black soil plain, you grew prickly trees and ran wild pigs, destroyed all my beautiful nature, flora and fauna. Rivers, roared and rampaged to the sea, causing massive erosion. That's what you did with it.
Okay, I hear. Last thing. So when you are finally turfed into eternal darkness and you go to meet Jesus, what would you like to have as your epitaph?
A good question. And this is big to me. I mean, I tell my staff, you've got to be able to produce results. You don't say, we can't.
So what are you most proud of? Give me one thing without going to bing bong.
I've got 100 things going around in my mind. Probably bananas or cattle. I got the Indonesian market reopened at an enormous cost to myself. I changed my vote from supporting the Liberals, and I looked like a political ballerina. I almost got beaten that election, rescuing the cattle industry. The live cattle market doubled the price of cattle. When live cattle were banned, it halved the price of cattle. Everyone's going broke. Cattle industry is closing down. The banana industry, John Anderson had issued an import permit for Philippine bananas to come in, biggest commodity sold in Woolworths and Coles, and it was gone. Bringing in massive diseases from the Philippines that we don't have in Australia, because we haven't had any farming in Australia, of course. Yes, there were 4 of us that were totally responsible. Dick Pratt was one of them, totally responsible for stopping the banana imports. So those 2 giant industries, 6,000 jobs were saved in the banana industry. And in the cattle industry, well, outside of coal and iron ore and gas, it's our biggest export item. And it was rescued from annihilation, in my opinion, my 2 greatest, saving those 6,000 jobs and rescuing the cattle industry. We're probably 200,000 or 300,000 jobs in the cattle industry.
Robert Bellarmine Carl Bing Bong Catter. It's been an absolute eye-opener. You are one fascinating onion to keep unpeeling. And can I just say thank you so much for being so generous with your time, because we've had a lot of our listeners say, this Bob Catter, he's an interesting character. I'd like to get to know him better. And I hope we've accomplished that today, Bob.
We will devise ways of spreading our wings. My time in life, I don't want to have to be leading a national movement. The great theologian, and I'll finish on this note, Tinbergen, he said all that a Christian can do is take hold of a giant problem at one small point and hold on, if necessary, to his personal detriment. Good call. May God's blessings be upon all your listeners. You have the kids. When I go to schools, I say a lot of things about Australia, who stopped the Germans, who stopped the Japanese, who took a country that nobody wanted and turned into the richest country on earth, who invented penicillin into your body, saved 20%. They always say, Australians! So who are we? Australians! Who are we? And they'll scream, Australians! Who are we? Australians! God bless our listeners, Luke.
Bob Catter, thank you so much. Can we stay in touch?
Wonderful privilege to be on your program.
Another Truckee Tuesday. In the gate when you're changing from lanes. Do not brake check me in my prime. Australia moves and it's thanks to you guys.
Time for another Truckee Tuesday here on Bonafide. Rod Hannafy, the Rocket Rod Hannafy, the hero of the highway, joins us as usual. Rod, a very warm welcome to you.
Thank you.
And, it was quite subdued. And speaking of subdued, the millennial went to a hen's night last night. And it's not pretty, what I'm looking at, Rod. Not pretty at all.
Hey!
Long as she had a good time.
What did you get up to, Kelsey?
Well, the theme was bogan brides. We dressed up as bogan brides, which was hilarious.
What's that? What's a bogan bride? Is that like the gypsy wedding thing?
Imagine if you were getting married down at the bolo club, you know?
People do that, you know. What time did you get home? What time did your head hit the pillow?
Okay, so we started at 10:30 in the morning. We got a fire engine stripper truck from the Northern Beaches into the city, which was a lot of fun. And then we did lunch. We went back to a friend's house, and then it got to about 10:30 and all the girls were still wanting to party. And I put my foot down and I said, absolutely not. I am going home. I've never been more confident in a decision to go home in my life.
Do you know what, Rod? Well done, Kelsey. Do you know what? It's made me think she's gone on a hen's night stripper fire engine, right? Rod.
Could you do it with a truck?
You're stealing my thunder, Kelsey.
Yeah.
Instead of calling it a B double, you could call it a bride double, and you could have special trailers all decked out for brides. Are you with me?
Yes, a scary thought, mate. There are a lot of times where they use trailers as sort of stages and things. A lot of events I've been to. I think they've even used mine at one stage. I went somewhere and they used a trailer for a stage. Industry events, and then of course rock concerts and the like. And most of the concerts that tour around Australia rely on trucks to deliver them. We had 45 trailers involved in the U2 tour many years ago, and I wrote a story for Truck and Life, and then Jim Haynes rang me up, and Jim said, I've read that story in Truck and Life. And I said, oh yeah? He said, we're doing a book called Great Australian Truckie Stories. Can you expand on it a bit? I said, when do you want it? He said, 2 months. I said, how many words do you want? He said, 5,000. So the book is out, Great Australian Trucking Stories, and I've got 4 stories in it. The truckie's life and rock and roll trucking was about the tour. And it was funny, at one stage I said to the man, I'd like to write a story. No, but I'll show it to you first. No. Oh, okay. He said, we've had this before and people have gone and written stuff and we weren't happy with it. So, of course, I'm standing outside the tour manager's door and the same bloke walks up and he says, what are you doing here? I said, well, you said no. So I asked him and he said yes.
Nice.
Never give up, mate.
Never give up. So instead of the B double, the bride double, or you could call it, instead of the road train, the bridal train.
Yes, very good. Well, actually, this is a question for the audience. Would there be money in truckies having, a second side hustle as strippers?
With blue singlets.
Well, they do have the calendar. But didn't you promote the calendar?
Yeah, we saw the calendar.
There was a truckie's calendar, yes, all in the undies. Yes. That's been going for a little while, I think. And, of course, there's a few others. The firefighters have one too, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
I think the firefighter one outsells the truckie one.
I'm pretty sure it does, yes. I think they're a little bit fitter. And my son, who's a firefighter, is visiting home. And, yes, he went to bed at 4 this morning and he wasn't real impressed when I woke him up to go for breakfast. But he's recovering at the moment.
A big shout out to all our emergency workers, first responders, and a big shout out to all the fireys out there. Kelsey's uncle was a fiery for most of his life. He's retired now. I used to work at a radio station where people used to smoke in the stairwell and it would set the alarms off. and the girls in the office ended up smoking there deliberately because there were no cameras just to get the fireys to arrive.
Ah, right. Yes. Generally tend to be fairly fit people. It was a fairly arduous thing to get in there. And, mate, some of the things they had to do, one of the tests that they had to do, you've got to run backwards and forwards between these two things. Yeah. And you've got to do it faster each time. And obviously you don't want a fiery getting halfway up the 14 floors and saying, I'm a bit tired now, I'm going to pull up here for a kip. Just wait. Can you hold that fire for a bit?
Yeah, no. What they do is fascinating. We should get a fiery on and talk about a day in the life of a fiery. Where Kelsey's uncle worked was Mona Vale Fire Station, and it was pretty sleepy. Wasn't a whole lot to do. So they used to do a tour of all the car parks at every beach to test the fire hydrants, of course.
Yes. Well, my son says they do community stuff, so he's actually based in Mount Isa. So he's with the Queensland Fireys. He's up there for 4 years. I haven't been to see him since he arrived there, but we went to Townsville for his graduation. And he said they do school events, go out to community things, and then, of course, some of it, and of course there's been a lot of rain in Mount Isa lately, so thank goodness there haven't been that many fires. But yes, but he's interesting to see how he's going to go up there for the 4 years, because, of course, it's rather warm up there in the moment. And I don't know whether you've heard, but Dubbo is supposed to be 45 degrees for the next 3 or 4 days. So I'm out top dressing the lawn, so I'm trying to do it in the early morning or early evening.
Good on you, Rod. Hey, listen, this is just a reminder that this week is the last week to enter Nature Bee's luxury holiday competition. If you use the code LUKE10, Luke 10, you get 10% off at the checkout, naturebee.com. Now, Millennial, we got sent a video from a listener. It was posted by Australia Road Train Life. Rod, shall we have a listen?
Barima, Hume Highway, January 8th, 2026. The news reported it as just another truck crash. 2 vehicles, 1 injured driver, traffic delays. But that's not the real story. The real story is about a man fighting for his life in Liverpool Hospital right now. A professional driver with 30 years experience, a top bloke, a mate, a work colleague, someone's family member. And the real story is about how our entire regulatory system failed him. Here's what actually happened in the darkness on the Hume that morning. A B-doubles trailer, completely detached, sitting in the middle of lane 1. The prime mover, 60 metres up the road, lights on. An experienced driver comes around that bend at highway speed. He sees the truck ahead, lights flashing. What he doesn't see, what he can't see in the darkness, is the abandoned trailer blocking his lane. Split-second decision. Swerve or die. Impact speed, 100 kilometres per hour. He's fighting for his life right now, through absolutely no fault of his own. But here's where this story gets worse. Witnesses on scene, first-hand accounts. The kingpin was still locked in the truck's 5th wheel, airlines hanging out the front of the trailer. The equipment failed while the rig was moving, and after the collision, instead of helping the critically injured driver, the other operator allegedly tried to reverse back under the trailers to make it look like the pin broke from impact, not before. He stood back, filming, didn't offer one bit of assistance. Not one bit. While strangers, absolute legends, rushed to save a dying man's life.
Wow. How powerful is that? Rod Hannafy, please.
Mate, it is. And I saw an initial comment, and then I saw comments that mirror what you've just heard there. I've still heard different comments from different people. And, of course, none of us were there, but they're quoting eyewitness things. Mate, if it's happened the way that he said, and the kingpin was still in the truck, the trailers have come off, that's a maintenance issue. That's where someone has either put a new kingpin in and hasn't tightened it, or the other one's got loose and failed. I heard reports where that driver who dropped the trailers was all over the road, and a number of people tried to call him up. That may well have been because that kingpin was coming loose. But I wasn't there, so I won't say who did what to who. There will be an investigation. The NHVR is well aware of it. What we need is that bloke to pull through. He was fighting for his life. My understanding is he has been, his situation has slightly improved. But as he said, had he not swerved that little bit to the right to virtually mean that he didn't plough into the back of the trailer, so of course he's sitting in the right-hand seat, he managed to swerve slightly to the right at the last second. It is believed that's what saved his life. The whole front of the truck ploughed into the back of the trailer, parked in the middle of the highway. It's not something you normally see. It's something where you've come around a corner, and I'm sure you've seen on the back of nearly every truck in Australia, Luke, there are either red and yellow squares, or there are red and yellow reflective marker plates. They either go along the bottom bumper bar, sometimes they go up the side of a car carrier, and they're not there, you're not expecting it on the highway, and they're there so that if you've got the truck parked, there is like something that stands out instead of 2 tiny little reflectors within your tail lights that you wouldn't normally see. So, look, there will be an investigation. The one thing that we've discussed in the past, Luke, is that we want to know what happened. We don't necessarily want to know that Fred screwed up or that Bill screwed up or that Sam screwed up. We want to know what caused it, whether it was found to be a mechanical failure and the maintenance wasn't right, and will that be fixed? This bloke, hopefully he survives, and whether he ever goes back to driving again, that's another thing for him to decide. But when these accidents occur, none of it is good. The result, the implication, the way the public see the industry, none of it is a good outcome. And if people die, well, then, of course, it's too late and we can't save them again. But if we don't find a solution from it, then that person got injured or died in vain. And we don't want to send people to jail because they didn't do the bolts up. We want them to have a proper procedure in place, that the bolts are checked, that these things don't happen again. And in this situation, we've seen a follow-up. That audio that you released, there's been a lot of talk on Facebook about it. And again, even in some of those comments. Now, some blokes in the best intent, when the accident first occurred, made comment, I heard this, I heard that, I heard this, I heard that. Half of that was wrong. So really, unless you were there standing, watching what happened, is it good to go off and say, I heard this, and maybe accuse some bloke wrongly and make it worse? We want to know there was an accident. We want to know the road is closed. We want to know there's a delay. We want to know that the bloke is in hospital and hopefully he'll survive. We want to know those things. But do you really have to get on there and talk shit that you don't know what happened because you weren't there and you've heard it from a friend who heard it from a friend? And we know what happens. It changes every time the story gets carried down. So, yes, we want to know what happened. Yes, we want to solve it. But honestly, to the blokes that get out there and say, I heard this, and mate, it's happened on the radio, even on the UHF. Oh, I heard there was 2 fatalities. No, there was 1. No, there was 3. Oh, it was his fault. No, it wasn't his fault. The road fell apart. No, it didn't fall apart. So if you don't know and you don't have the information, shut up. Leave it and let it get sorted, and let's fix it in the end. But for goodness sake, please don't make it worse. Because what if you accuse some bloke and it wasn't his fault, and then he's going to live with that for the rest of his life? Because people don't forget, do they, Luke?
So we actually don't know from a first-hand witness that driver tried to cover up the problem with the kingpin. That's all hearsay and allegations.
That's what's in that tape that you heard, and I've heard similar things. I read that the second lot of comments on Facebook were, I have eyewitness reports, this is what happened. The same as that, what you just read out. But I wasn't there, Luke. We don't know which one is right until the investigation is done. The bloke's injured. We want him to get better. When they do the investigation, hopefully they will find those things out. And if anybody's at fault, they will be pursued. The situation where one driver filmed instead of helping the other, is that what we are, really? We're all supposed to be human. The first thing you should do in the event of an accident is go and help those. And look, there wouldn't be probably more than 1 in 5 truck drivers in Australia who didn't see that accident in America, where old mate just wheeled round and did the U-turn straight in front of a car. The car ploughed into it. And I've got to say, we watched that live. It was video footage filmed from inside the truck, and you could see the bloke as he's wheeled around, and he just watched the car plough into it, and his face was, oh, look at that. That's a worry. And then people are different and people grieve differently. But if you don't know what happened, and you've heard it from a friend of a friend of a friend, don't say that, because you could well be wrong and you could be hanging some innocent person out when that's not what happened because you weren't there.
Rod, for the non-truck drivers listening to this, and I know this is probably a stupid question, what is a kingpin?
No such thing as a stupid question, Kelsey, only stupid answers.
Oh, thank you.
So on a semi-trailer, and let's just make it simple for the moment, you have a prime mover. You've got the cabin at the front, and then on the end of the prime mover, you have the chassis, and on that is mounted the turntable. So the turntable is normally mounted onto that chassis by 8 to 12 bolts. They're all high set, and that turntable has a slot in it And then on the front of the trailer, it's flat underneath. That's called the skid plate. And in the middle of that skid plate is the kingpin. It is a steel pin. It has a flange on the bottom, so it can't lift up and down. And when it goes into the turntable, there is a big steel bar locks across the back of it. So that's what that kingpin is on the trailer. The turntable hooks onto the kingpin. That's what keeps the two together. Now, when we drop the trailer, because you are picking up a different trailer, you wind the legs down, you pull the handle out of the turntable, that releases the kingpin. But the kingpin is bolted in. Sometimes they're welded, very rarely, because that can break, but they are bolted in. They have to be replaced. There is a test normally when you do a machinery. They check both for wear in the kingpin, because if there's too much play, then it will move backwards and forwards and increase that wear. If there is wear because that steel kingpin is worn and it's obviously got smaller as it's been worn, then it may also allow play. Now, those things should be tested regularly, and any driver, when we hook up, you back under the trailer, you lift the legs up to make sure that the height is right, you lock the kingpin. Some companies even require, and they have part of their procedure, and even there's a video camera that looks that you actually got out of the truck, walked around, stuck your head in behind the back of the kingpin to make sure that it's locked properly. Because, look, we have had blokes drop trailers coming out driveways and up the road sometimes, but this situation was worse. He's gone a long distance on the highway, so it would seem unlikely, but not impossible, that the kingpin may have failed, the turntable may have failed. But if what they're saying is true in that account, and so far that seems to be the most truthful of what I've seen, is that the truck was still up the road, the kingpin was still in it, so the kingpin has come out from underneath the semi. And that's a maintenance issue.
Well explained.
I was just looking up some diagrams when you were explaining that. And I don't think I've ever really thought twice about how trucks were like
connected together. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Pretty complex looking at these diagrams.
Like if you pull a triple road train, right? So you have three trailers, not just one like your average semi. And look, you know, we do triples and there's B triples and there's all these other combinations. That single pin at the front is pulling all of that weight. So they are rated, they are generally tested regularly, they are looked after. They're obviously rated when the truck is built for what its capacity is. Mine actually has a light on it, so that when you hook up, you get out, you check that the handle has pushed right back into the lock position. There is a bolt on the front for adjustment. You check that that is flush with the turntable. You make sure that it is sitting on the turntable. And that's why I said you wind the legs up. Some blokes have backed in underneath and the trailers have been too high. They've actually hit the back of the truck because they've missed the pin altogether. Others have gone in and had the pin sit on top of the turntable, then driven off and had the trailer fall off altogether. Yeah. So you do have to do checks. Mine then has a white light that shows that it is physically connected. Some of the trucks now, if you've got a CAN bus in them, that light actually comes up on the dash to confirm that it is locked properly. And if it's not locked, you get a red flashing light or a warning as well. So that's in the old days, it was just hook up. You were responsible, made sure it was. That's why we do a tug test. So once you've hooked up, you've got the legs up, because if you pull the trailers with the legs down, you break the legs. You've got the airlines connected. You move forward just a bit. You pull the trailer brakes on, and you make sure that the turntable is locked. And that also tells you if the brakes are working on the trailer. Because there's no good if you pull forward, pull the trailer brakes on, and you know we can do that separately. There's a handpiece that just operates the trailer brakes, not the truck ones. And if you pull forward, pull the handpiece on, and you keep rolling down the road, well, then the trailer's got no brakes. And of course, you want to know that before you drive out in the highway. So those are the two critical things, that you've done that connection right, that the hoses are there, they've got air to the trailers, and that the kingpin is properly locked.
Wow. We learn something every day. Thank you for that, Rod.
So do we, mate.
Just moving on. Kelsey posted a video on the Bonafide Facebook page this week relating to our chat about drug use amongst truck drivers. Here's a clip. I'm absolutely fatigued. And the boss said, you want your job, you got to keep driving. And he did. And he regrets it, and he regrets it to this day. He also said something fascinating. He said that he was sky high on uppers, on drugs, to keep awake. And he prayed that trucks coming in the opposite direction were also high on drugs, because he wouldn't want to be passing a truck that was being driven by a driver that was fatigued and not on drugs, because they were all under these unscrupulous deadlines from unscrupulous bosses.
Mate, not all. No, thank you. So we did talk about that. We spoke about that last week with the drug thing. And look, something which is slightly related just for a moment, we'll just take a slight detour. A bloke rang me during the week, and he had been involved in an accident. So he's driving a road train. The back trailer has tipped over. First accident this bloke's ever had, many years. He's pulled up. He's fairly shaken. The trailer is sitting there upside down behind the first. So the truck's there, then the trailer, and the dolly and trailer's upside down the side of the road. And then he's pretty shaken, so he rings up. Tow truck's going to be 3 or 4 hours. He won't be driving. He's got another bloke coming out to take the truck. He says, oh, geez, I've got a beer in the truck. I'm going to have a beer. I need to just calm my nerves, settle down. I'm going to be sitting here for 3 or 4 hours. So, of course, eventually the police turn up. Oh, I can smell beer on you. Yes, mate, yes. He said, this is what happened. And the copper said, oh, you're still in charge of the vehicle. You know, you've got the keys. You could drive off. He said, can you see that trailer sitting upside down, fully connected to the truck? I'm not driving that anywhere. It's not going anywhere. And he's still been charged as being in control of a motor vehicle. Now, there are some truckies who might carry a beer with them. They have a really long day. They know they're going to pull up at night. They have a meal. They might have a beer. And even if they are parked and they are on a 7-hour break, if they have the keys in their possession and they are then intercepted or something happens or they're checked for any reason, they can still be charged with being in charge of a motor vehicle. So blokes out there should know this. Many of them may not. And look, it's their time. You and I would think if you're not going anywhere, what you do within reason. And we know that, Luke, I'm sure you're aware that our blood alcohol level in trucks is 0.001, technically nothing. You are not allowed to have any alcohol in your system, where in a car you're allowed 0.05. And then, of course, you get mid-range and all that sort of stuff above that. We're allowed 0, nothing, same as P-platers. And that's how it should be in our industry. But if blokes are not aware that if they pull up somewhere and they have a beer at night before they go to bed and something happens that they're intercepted or woken, or the next morning somebody says, hey, you know, do you have a beer last night? Yeah, mate, yeah. You had the keys, yeah? Well, you were in possession. They can technically be charged with being under the influence of alcohol whilst in possession or control of a motor vehicle. So I just wanted to raise that to those who may not have thought about it. Old mate's going to let me know how he goes in court, because he believes he has a good case. He probably should not have been charged if you understand the situation, but these things happen, mate, so you've got to be aware of those things to protect yourself.
Got a comment from Gary, and it reads, being that you get tested every 20 seconds by your employer or the receiver while you're on their site, or by the State Traffic Task Force, you'd be game to try. Shame on the dole bludgers who don't get tested in order to receive the taxes we pay.
And what did they say recently, mate? It's now that they believe that drug use, and of course, they RBT, we've talked about being a silver bullet and stopped a lot of people from driving perhaps when they shouldn't, and thinking a bit more about it. I believe in a couple of instances recently where they've done both drug and alcohol testing, that recreational drug use in car drivers is becoming more of a problem. And in one instance at least, there were more drug-affected drivers than alcohol-affected. And that's really scary. If those people are driving down the road affected by those drugs, mate, how the hell do they know what they're doing? And we know about the scourge of ice and all these other things, mate. So, look, I hope that people don't need it. I wish that we could make sure that they didn't do it. But, yeah, the world's not a perfect place, not yet anyway.
It's interesting because at the time of recording today's Truckee Tuesday, we're in a long weekend with double demerit points. But just coming back from Channel 7 this morning, on a very quiet, sunny Sunday morning. I've never seen so many highway patrol cars and random breath testing units in my life. When you are pulled over at a random breath testing unit, I have never been subjected to a drug swab. Anytime I've been pulled over at an RBT, it's just your blood alcohol. Should there be mandatory drug testing as well as alcohol testing at RBTs?
Because it's not as quick. So, look, I've been drug tested when being pulled up. And, of course, you've got to take the thing and wipe it on your tongue. And then I think you've got to wait 5 minutes while they get the results. So, where they can pull you up in the car, blow in this, count to 10. At the end of that 10, virtually it's a 2-second thing, and it says you've either got alcohol or you haven't. That's one thing. Because of the fact that drug testing is not yet that efficient, I suppose, or quick, can you imagine, we've pulled up 100 cars and 100 cars are all lined up down the street waiting for their drug results. Now, whether they have information, whether they look at you and think, geez, that Luke Boner, he's a bit of a surly-looking character, we better drug test him. I don't know how that goes for the future, but it's concerning that where they've done that, they have found more people with drugs than alcohol.
Yeah, all right.
That's a scary future.
Make the testing more efficient, quicker, because I haven't got a problem. I don't want someone on the road driving who's affected by anything. Robert said, not going to name the company, every time we had a load from Brisbane to Melbourne in a B-double, driving supervisor would hand you your paperwork, plus a bag of stay-awake pills. Throw your logbook on the bunk and forget about it. Don't stop until you get to Melbourne, he says. Anyway, I dumped the drugs in the bin, drove by my logbook hours. When I arrived in Melbourne Depot, I got fired. That's from Robert.
Yes, that did happen in the past, and as we've discussed, in those days they would put somebody else in the truck. Now there's not enough drivers to fill the trucks that we have, so that's unlikely to happen. You should not be forced to break the law. The chain of responsibility says that anybody in that position, the bloke that gave you that manifest and that instruction, and that's where, of course, you would write that in your diary. Supervisor Fred Nurk said this, gave me this, here is my paperwork, copy of it, and I said to you, not going to happen, and then I was sacked, and you can fight them. The trouble is, of course, that's after you've been fired, then you've got to find another job. We hope that it's not like that now.
Yeah. Similar comments. Mark has said the old days of buying shakers from the chemist at the Rockley markets. What are shakers, Rod?
Ephedrine. So that's where I think ephedrine is one of those things where you used to go and buy ephedrine tablets.
Sudafed.
My understanding was they use them to make, pseudoephedrine. They use them to make, is it LSD or something? They take all the tablets out and buy it, and that's why they restricted the amount you can buy now to one packet instead of people buying 50. Never done it, Luke. Don't know what it is, but that's what it was. Shakers were ephedrine or pseudoephedrine. There were some drivers who used to go to a doctor and use Medislim. And look, we discussed the problem of not working as hard as we used to, and still eating big meals and perhaps being overweight. So the Medislim was, seen to be something that was needed, but that was also, I think, that had pseudoephedrine in it as well, from memory.
Yeah.
And in America, my understanding is, Luke, that in America you can actually get ephedrine from a vending machine. If you're tired. And I don't think it's only for truck drivers, but and of course in the war, they fed drugs to all the people in the army to keep them awake to fight the war, but that's a whole different situation.
Yeah, and also hallucinating drugs to take their mind off
what they were doing,
the drama that they were facing. Interesting stuff. Please give us your feedback. 0291289311. I read an interesting story online, Rod, about Mercedes-Benz trucks. It's global news, actually. Mercedes-Benz are going to send an electric model across Europe, and it's looking to test megawatt charging under real operations. The e-Actros 600 truck model. Rod, what do you know about this?
Mate, Volvo have been involved in it. We've got electric Volvos operating here now. There are a couple of garbage trucks. My understanding is that they have one operating on a mine site over in WA. I think that's even an autonomous one over there. So look, Mercedes, one of the biggest vehicle manufacturers in the world. You've got Volvo is the other one. Volvo own Mack in Australia or in the world. So look, they've got the capacity to go out and do that testing. We've discussed where they're going to do a trip across Europe. You've got all those different borders and things. They don't have the distances between towns that we do. So it's funny, I heard you talking to James the other day, and he said, for the first time in December, that hybrid vehicles, not just electric, because my son wanted to argue it was electric. I said, no, it's hybrid, outsold normal vehicles for the first time. Of course, the thing is, what's going to happen, Luke, when 18 of you are queued up to try and get your car charged up on the side of the road when you're heading down the Hume Highway? Be interesting to see where that ends up. But for trucks, trucks that work locally, your garbage truck, your local pickup truck, your water truck that delivers around town, you work them during the day. They're not doing a lot of kilometres. They're stop-start. So have you heard of regenerative braking, Luke?
No, go on. Educate me.
You've got an electric vehicle. It has an electric motor. It uses power to drive the wheels. But there is also a thing called regenerative braking, so that every time you brake, it puts power back into those batteries. So, if you've got something working around town and you're accelerating braking, they get a lot more distance out of it. Instead of just taking the power out of the battery, they're putting some back in. So for those situations when you can then park that truck up at night, charge it all night and go again in the morning, of course, as one of my sons said when we discussed this, well, where does the electricity come from? You've still got to generate the electricity to charge the battery, so there is still a cost. It's not like it's sort of free coming out of the sun. You don't see too many vehicles with solar panels on the roof unless you're a camper and you're going to pull up and use that solar panel at night. I have seen a photo in America, only in America, of course, where a bloke had a generator mounted in the back of the ute, and the generator produced electricity to charge the motor in the car.
So what was charging the car was actually petrol. Or diesel.
Diesel. Diesel or petrol.
Coal-fired fuel. That's very, very funny. Listen, truck sales have enjoyed a frantic finish to last year. Some of the figures are through. The December Truck Industry Council T-Mark truck sales data is out. It saw 3,733 sales made. Now, that's down from the 3,810 new sales recorded in November, but it's an improvement on the 3,250 heavy vehicles sold in December. But let's have a look at some of these brands. When it came to total truck sales, Rod, Isuzu once again comfortably sat on top, 861 in December. The next best was Hino with 457, Fuso 351, wrapping up the top three, and Kenworth at 230, Volvo, the 208, finished ahead of a pack of trucks, including Scania. I'm just going through some of the other, Iveco, Fiat, but it looks as though Isuzu is leading the way.
And they have for something like 25 years, is my understanding. But of course, what we're talking about here is everything from your little 2-ton truck that the local council uses as a tipper to the 2-ton truck that the fruit shop owns, up to things. Isuzu do make prime movers. But they don't really make highway prime movers for B-doubles and for line haul interstate work. Their sleepers are very small. Of course, they're a Japanese brand and they've been around for a long time. They do continually upgrade. Yes, they have electric vehicles as well, as my understanding, but it's the vast majority of those smaller rigids and little trucks that increase that total number of sales. So if Kenworth made trucks of that size, maybe it would be a different argument, but they don't. Kenworth led Volvo again. They were having a big fight there a couple of years ago to see who was going to be on top of the top section of the market, the heavy line haul section. But yes, numbers down a little bit overall, but Isuzu leads in total numbers as it has done for many years.
You're talking about Japanese trucks and vehicles. Do you remember back in the 80s, Kelsey wouldn't have a clue as to what I'm alluding to here, but you remember the Suzuki ad with the 3 sumo wrestlers, not so squeezy?
Was it Suzuki?
Yeah, I'm sure
I think
it was.
it was Mitsubishi. No, Mitsubishi, not so squishy.
No, it was not so squeezy.
Well, I'm sure you'll find if you go back and look, Luke, I think it was Mitsubishi was the one at the time, because I can imagine a little Suzuki, you wouldn't get one sumo wrestler in most Suzukis, let alone, and they don't really make trucks, Luke, so I'm pretty sure you'll find it was Mitsubishi.
It was.
New Mitsubishi Fuso Canter with advanced safety, comfort and handling. It's what drivers have been hanging out for. ABS. Please, not so squeezy.
I've just looked it up. Mitsubishi Canter.
Yes.
You
Again, a small truck, a little local town truck sort of thing, yeah.
You're 100% the sumo wrestler Canter commercial. Not so squeezy.
Yes. Yes, and then look, we talk about living in trucks. Now, if you look at America and you look at what they have over there, they do not use cab-over trucks.
Yep.
They use bonneted. So
truck,
you and I have discussed it. Cab over, the engine sits on top of the engine. That's why it's called a cab over. And it's either a bonneted truck because it has a big bonnet, or they're called a conventional as opposed to the cab over. Now, many years ago, a company, JB Hunt, ordered 1,000 new cab over trucks. The drivers refused to drive them. They cancelled the order. And if you look over there, their length laws only apply to the trailer. Hence, you will see a 53-foot trailer, depending on what state, and there's all 50 sets of rules over there, of course. They're all different axles and weights and everything. But generally in America, they run a prime mover, single steer, bogie drive, 2 axles, and 2-axle trailers. Yes, it varies, but that's sort of their standard thing. They're not as efficient. A lot of them run around light, partly loaded. Some of them, really big, heavy stuff, that's different altogether. But their length laws apply to the trailer. Then what you put in front of the trailer is up to you. And for blokes that get in the truck and live in it for the next 2 months and travel from one state to another and to Canada and to Mexico and don't see home for 3 months, they get 70-inch sleepers as a minimum. That's called a small sleeper. Some of them have bloody near an apartment on the back of the truck. Now, there are some length restrictions, but here our length applies to the overall combination.
Yeah.
So it includes the truck. So that's why we have cab overs, because they're shorter. Then you get more freight carrying space. But it means I, as a driver that runs line haul, live in a 2 metre by 2 metre box, which is my kitchen, my lounge room, my dining room, my workplace, and my workspace. And, if you're going to live in the truck for a week, that's not too bad. If you're going to live in it for a month and you're going to run to Darwin and Perth, mate, you've got to carry a lot of clothes, you've got to carry food, you've got to carry cooking stuff. And everybody here wants the rules like in America. We don't necessarily all want apartments on the back, but we have just had a change in the law. So that heavy vehicle national law review that I keep bagging on about, that's taken 9 years, that will come into place in, we believe, the middle of this year. And that will allow a normal semi, prime mover and trailer, which is currently limited to 19 metres, except for some exclusions, to go to 20 metres. And we said, well, if you're going to do that for semis, you should allow B doubles to go to 27, currently restricted to 26, again with a whole raft of different exclusions, so that we could have a conventional truck, because they ride better, because they're safer, because the bonnet's out the front, because when you break down, they tilt the bonnet instead of tilting the cab and you can still sleep, and it rides better. And when you are doing 5,000 and 6,000 kilometres a week, Luke, you imagine you go down the road in your car and you hit a bump and you think, oh, that's a bump. I hit those daily, weekly, hourly. They have an impact into my body. With our roads the way they are impacting into the trucks. The cost of our maintenance has gone through the roof. Shock absorbers failing, bits and pieces coming loose. We're talking about an accident where the kingpin came out. We don't know what happened there. But that comes about because our roads are not billiard smooth. Now, we've got a small population, a large country. We can't have them perfect. But if we don't report them if we don't say it. And I rang TMR, and the lady actually rang me back. She said, "Oh, you've lodged a complaint about a bump at Brookstead."
Yeah.
Yes, I have. I said I complained, had it fixed 5 years ago. Look, we'll get the surveyor to go and have a look. Thank you very much for reporting it. She said, "We wouldn't be aware if you didn't tell us." And I said, "Mate, no worries." And I rang her back and gave her another one. So we have to do our part, but then we have to have them do it properly. And again, mate, I'm going to pick on TMR. The other complaint I put in, they had resurfaced the road northbound from Gundawindi towards Toowoomba. Now, they didn't fix the road first. They just went straight over every failure, pothole, dip, culvert, bump, every other bloody thing. And when I rode over it, I said, "This is ridiculous. You're wasting our money. You're not doing it properly. It's going to fail underneath." And what happened 2 days later, Luke? I get a phone call. All of that road now is peeling off, and the trucks are all throwing rocks at everybody coming the other way because they haven't done it properly.
Yeah, they didn't.
We
do it
paid for that, and we're going to have to pay again.
It's a constant frustration, isn't it? Just while we're talking about trucks, and finally today, explain to me about what the Australian operator Arrow Transport is doing. Apparently, they've successfully completed a trial of an A-triple road train combination in and around the Port of Brisbane. What's going on here?
So they're carting containers. So when a lot of our stuff comes into Australia via import in containers from overseas. It goes to the wharf. They send trucks to the wharf. Now, you may, let's say, Luke, you've gone and ordered a container full of Matchbox cars. So you set the truck up, he goes down, he picks up the container, he brings it out to your house. He might have a swing lifter where they actually lift the container off the trailer and place it on the ground, and then you can unload your Matchbox cars at your leisure. Or they'll take it to a warehouse and they will unload it, and then they might distribute it for you to all your stores or whatever the case may be. But then when those containers are empty, they've got to go back to the port because they then go back overseas. You can't just throw them away. So what they're doing is they're looking at trying to reduce the cost of container movement. So a TEU is a 20-foot equivalent unit. So yes, containers come generally in 20 and 40. Let's keep it reasonably simple. So a 40-footer is 2 TEU, 20-foot equivalent unit. And we're moving, look, I don't know what the figures are, Luke. I know that I think Los Angeles is the busiest container port in the world. They move millions of containers in a year. And we do so in Australia. We've got big ports in each of the capital cities. But the boats go to the capital cities, and then those containers get distributed right across Australia to places. And what they're trying to do is reduce the cost per TEU. So they set up in Brisbane, there was actually a combination, which to you and me looks like a road train, but they had the containers double stacked, Luke. They're actually one on top of the other. So the thing's about 5.5 metres tall, but they're carting empties around the port. It's in a restricted area. They control the roads. They know what's there. They're not going to hit any bridges. So there's all these things being trialled to improve the utilisation of containers. And if you go back to, mate, the first A-double that was ever done in Australia was specifically for export cereal and grain out of Toowoomba and the Darling Downs into Brisbane. So in the past, you could carry one 20-footer loaded to 25 tonne. Again, very simplistically, you could carry a 40-foot container, but it could still only be loaded to 25 tonne because of the axle ratings. And they said, well, if we could get a road train, and it looks like a road train and it smells like a road train and it drives like a road train, but it's called an A-double, just to be difficult. And it's got to be only 30 metres long, and they can carry two 40-footers. So the thing with Arrow is another extension of trying to improve the efficiency of the container transport network.
Thank you for explaining. Lots going on. Rod Hannafy, we'll let you go. We'll let you motor on up the road. Thank you so much again for another very informative Truckee Tuesday. And on behalf of the millennial who's passed out, we'll talk... I want to thank you.
I'm still here.
Oh, she's still... Did you hear that? She's still there.
I did, yes. Quietly in the background. Good on you, mate.
And we'd like to thank Nature Bee very much, and maybe even just this morning, Barocca for Kelsey.
Yeah.
And the Power Shake that beautiful chocolate shake. But get your...
Yes, I had a power shake for breakfast on Friday, mate.
And what did you think?
Oh, yeah, well, I had them before. No, they're very good, mate. And look, they've improved them, I believe, from when they first put them out there. That's why they've sort of changed the marketing a little bit. So it is a meal replacement, and we've discussed how hard it is to get decent meals on the road. And yet virtually you've got a little container with the powder, you get a little shaker bottle, and it's only 250 ml. So I use milk, and then I just pour a bit more milk in and give it a clean out and a shake and drink the rest. And, mate, you can't buy a meal that cheap. You can't buy a meal as quickly or as simply by pulling up, going somewhere into the roadhouse, getting some of the stuff that might not be as good for you. So for blokes that are looking for something simple, efficient and generally healthy to improve you, whether you take your Nature Bee on top because there's Nature Bee in the drink, well and good. But, mate, for us on the road, I do believe it is just a godsend.
Right, Hannafy, I'll let you go. Enjoy your family.
All right, well, the truck's in for a little bit of work. I'm hoping it'll be done on Tuesday morning. Our workshop's even starting at 4 in the morning because it's supposed to be 45 degrees here Tuesday. So they'll have it done, then I'll have to go and load in the heat. That'll be fine. We had a bit of a small leak on the diff, and we went and got some proper instructions on to why this should not do that and that shouldn't move there, and hopefully that's all getting sorted for me while I have a couple of days at home with some of the family who are down to visit.
Very, very good. And we'll talk soon.
We'll see you in Dubbo soon.
and for goodness sake, drive safe to get home to your family as well.
Thank you so much for joining us on episode 76 of the Bonafide podcast.
So, Luke, I'm sure you've got a thought of the day.
No, I haven't. It's just an observation.
What?
I tried that new hamburger place up the road next to the bakery.
What hamburger?
I tried a new burger.
Yeah. What was it?
It's called a Wookiee burger.
A Wookiee burger? Okay, and how was it?
A bit chewy.
Oh, Ewok. Oh, Chewbacca. Wait, you got to do the sound. Oh. Oh, you can actually do that much better than I
No,
could.
Jacob does it really well.
Oh. Insert the sound here. Goodbye.
And a quick reminder, Power Bee from Nature Bee, the full meal replacement. Power pollen, beautiful chocolate flavour, and if you spend over $79.90, and basically 2 intro packs for you and a friend, and then you're in the running to win a $20,000 bucket list travel experience of a lifetime. That competition ends Friday, January 30, so don't let it slip. Head to naturebee.com